Hi, CistReactZ. How you doing? Did you know that 70% of you guys are not subscribed? Also, did you know that I am living in those 70% walls right now? And if you want me to stop, you'll hit that subscribe button? What is up, you awesome kissers? This is CistReactZ, guys. Today we're reacting to the world of Five Nights at Freddy's. So make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to THAFNINE, and comment down below. All right, let's get into this. Bob, I said Bob right before I hit the play button. That just ruined the... Anyway, this is like a 3-hour video, so yeah, let's get into this. Bob, that's what I wanted to say, but I said the Bob too early. This video contains scenes that's suitable for people with photosensitive epilepsy, sudden loud noises, lots of jump scares. You've been warned. You've seen it on the screen. All right, here we go.
In the past couple of years, I've talked extensively about how jaded I feel about the state of the AAA.
This is gonna be the longest FNAF commentary video.
I probably sound like a broken record at this point, and people can start to predict what I'm about to say. But no matter how much I repeat myself, the sentiment still hasn't changed. A couple of years ago, horror fans ate extremely good with game studios pumping out horror games as if they were cavemen just discovering fire. With games like Alien Isolation, The Evil Within, Until Dawn, and the cancelled Silent Hills playable teaser among a few games
Sonic reaction.
It seemed certain that horror fans would be eating extremely well for years to come. However, fast forward a couple of years, and it seems like the only horror franchise that's still consistently doing well in the grand scheme of things is Resident Evil, with a very well-received remake and 2 decent mainline sequels spawning from the franchise. It really should be easy to push out horror games nowadays, since there's so many ideas out there and so many ways you can scare a potential audience for several hours at a time. And it's because of this that horror fans have moved on to greener pastures. Those greener pastures being the indie horror game community. Developers of indie horror games don't really have to worry about trying to appease corporate overlords.
Objective
and this
move.
freedom allows them to make whatever type of game they want. Which is incredible, because all they seem to do is make the 1500th PT clone. In the midst of all of this, there's a franchise that stayed in the public eye for almost a decade and is up there with the biggest names in horror, like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and
There's a lot of footage in this video for commentary. I love it. Big organization, base specimen.
It's a franchise that started from one small game that can be completed in less than an hour and has ballooned since then into a massive convoluted library of content that's captured the hearts and minds of many horror fans on the internet. The franchise in question is Five Nights at Freddy's.
What the hell?
Wait a second. Didn't you cover this before? I hear you exclaim from the comfort of your own home. And
what does this say on the screen behind the
I did. In 2019, I dropped a video on my channel talking about Five Nights at Freddy's and the effect it had on the independent horror game community from an outsider standpoint at the time.
Emily wants to play in that thumbnail.
I covered the first 4 games in the series, as I felt that those ones and the gameplay mechanics they provided laid a lot of groundwork for indie horror games to copy in the years moving forward. However, as you'll soon find out, the franchise is so much bigger than that, and that video only really covered a small fraction of it. So if you still want to watch that video, even though I do find it outdated, it will be linked in the description and will show up around here. But I think it's time to delve a little deeper into the franchise as a whole.
Is that fucking me?
What's bad about it, and what's really, really ugly about it.
I promise I won't pause so much. This is a 3-hour video, but bro, I really gotta say, I like this person's like format for a commentary video. Like, there's so much footage, so much jokes going into this, so much effort. It's crazy. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this. Like, ever. This is unique. Five Nights at
Freddy's is a franchise that everyone even remotely into horror games probably knows about, and if they don't know about it, they're probably lying.
You might hear Train too, by the way.
It's also a franchise that I hold very close to my heart for a variety of reasons. After several years of dealing with Slender clones where the only difference between any of the games was the 3D model that's used to chase the player character and the items that are supposed to be collected, Five Nights at Freddy's provided something entirely different for budding indie horror game developers, for better and for worse in the long term. Starting around 8 years ago with just the original game created by Scott Cawthon,
make me feel old.
Blossomed into a massive multimedia franchise way bigger than a lot of horror properties could dream of, including 13 games, 31 books, a ton of merch, a live-action movie in development, and even a horror attraction of
I don't think I've ever counted out the games on my hand before.
There was an actual Five Nights at Freddy's related
13 games, that's insane.
Was open for some time before getting shut down a couple of years ago. But how, I hear you wonder? Yes, I heard your thoughts. How could a game that looks like this spawn a franchise that looks like this? Well, in this video, we're going to dive right into the deep end and swim with the sharks. But not before covering ourselves in blood and then diving into the shark-infested pool, because I'm going to be covering the entirety of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise up until the latest game in the mainline series. This will be why we're going to be sitting here for 3 hours. Content I'm going to cover, and yet again I'm subjecting myself to a couple of millennia at my desk in the editing room. But at least the wait between the last video and this one is justified, right? Right, guys? Anyways, in order to measure the
I think I looked at his channel. I think the last video came out like 2 years ago. I think.
We must first go back to the very beginning.
Back to the very beginning. Chapter 1. FNAF Origins. I love these transition scenes too.
The year is 2013. Vine takes the entire world by storm with its short-form content formats and single-handedly damages race relations for a couple of years. Google manages to revive cyberbullying by releasing the Google Glass to a grand audience of 2 people. Microsoft
Google
released
Plus?
a brand new
Jesus.
machine, I mean the Xbox One. And Margaret Thatcher. In the midst of this chaotic year, a man who went by the name of Scott
What a
Cawthon will
flashback.
release a game that he didn't even
It's been a
know would
long
be the cause
time.
of this monolith of content. Fresh off the press from games such as The Desolate Hope,
Still gotta play his old
he was
games,
about
too.
to release a video game that would destroy the competition and become the basis of many a clone and establish a brand new subgenre of video games. The game is so massive that it really doesn't need any introduction. And that game is Five Nights at Chipper & Sons Lumber Co. Okay? So I bet all of you are wondering, what the hell is this? Well, this is the true introduction into the Five Nights at
I
Freddy's
downloaded that,
franchise.
but I still have to make a video on it.
Technically, after a string of efforts in the animation and game design industry, mainly in the field of Christianity, Scott developed several new games and attempted to submit some of them to Steam Greenlight. Yes, you used to actually have
Steam
to submit games
Greenlight.
to Steam Greenlight in order
Man,
to
I
have them
remember
listed on
that.
Steam. Nowadays, this notion is completely unheard of, considering the amount of content that's released
Remember
on
everyone
Steam
used to
on a
say, his
daily
page got
basis with
greenlit. Oh my god.
varying degrees of quality. But back then, getting
Wow.
your game on Steam was
Those
a
game names are
complete
crazy.
and utter nightmare. Because of the sheer amount of games being released and Valve's fear of having a storefront full of awful cash grabs that are put on the service for a quick buck, the Greenlight process was made. And the way it worked was, game developers had to first cough up $100 from their savings to even have their game added to the Greenlight list with no
$100?
guarantee that the game would even be added onto Steam. So you're essentially gambling.
$100
Once you've scrounged
for
up enough money to have
luck?
your game listed, you're then at the mercy of the most ruthless and dastardly demons that roam this earth. Gamers! The Steam user base would then vote on which games they wanted on the platform, and the top pledged games would then be made available on Steam. This was a fairly long and daunting process for a lot of developers, because you'll notice a lot of independent games released
Enjoy
before
the sport
2015
of
had trailers
Vandurance.
or gameplay videos, all begging fans of the game to vote for it on Steam Greenlight to increase its chances of getting onto Steam. Now that you've got some context as to how games used to be added onto Steam, think about how many developers placed their game onto Steam Greenlight hoping for a massive audience that would enjoy their game for years to come. Only to get 0 pledges. A moment
Lots
of
of
silence for
people.
them. Moving swiftly on! So how does
I've
this
never,
relate
like,
back to
actually
Scott?
heard of that process
Well, he went
before.
through this process a lot.
I'm actually happy you
so
explained
much so
it.
to the point that he almost quit developing games entirely, but we're getting a little too ahead of ourselves here. While his previous games such as The Desolate Hope were able to get through that process, Chipper & Sons Lumber Corporation was unable to. I wonder why.
Denied.
Chipper & Sons Lumber Corporation was released sometime in 2013, and you can probably already see the similarities to FNAF just from the game art alone. Jeez, you scared. Upon opening the game for the first time,
hell?
you'll be greeted with a simple menu along with a seemingly innocent beaver who's ready to welcome you to the dark depths of hell. His
Those
name is
eyes are
Ty,
terrifying.
And he's the sons of Chipper & Sons Lumber Co. Judging by the menu music though, this company is definitely more suited for infomercials about having an accident in the workplace and looking for compensation.
Was Garfield just sitting in a chair and Heavy staring at my soul?
Have you had an accident at work and it wasn't your fault?
Yes!
That's really unfortunate.
Wow.
When you start a new game, you get thrown right into the world of Chipper & Sons and meet Chipper, who's your dad, and he's about to throw you out of the house to do some hard manual labor. He claims that by the time he was Tyke's age, he was
horrible.
out doing hard tasks such as building dams, cutting trees, and blowing up termite mounds. Wait, what? Run that by me again.
Why did the
Blowing up
refrigerator
termite
blow
mounds. The war with the termites has scarred us all. Famine, disease, death. Did I download the right game? I thought this was a child-friendly adventure game. Oh, he was just kidding. What a trickster.
Just kidding,
I thought
Star?
he was actually about to induct us into a beaver terrorist organization. Also, why does it look like you're about to bite Tyke's head off? Are you okay, Chipper? Your hair looks like Play-Doh. Sort it out. After he tells you what you're
Jeez.
supposed to do, you get given an acre of land and some plans. What kind of plans? I don't know. You'll figure it out. And then you get thrown right into
I'm
the
sure.
game. Oh my god, my eyes! There's so much stuff going on! Where's the depth? What do these buttons mean? Okay, maybe I'm overreacting, but this first menu is definitely not nice on your eyes. The butterflies, the flowers everywhere, and the fact that Chipper is completely motionless while you're hyperventilating on the job.
Is that a Moi
Are
Ai?
you sure this wasn't a horror game from the start? And we must have an infinite water supply from somewhere, or Tyke's just wasting the water. What are you doing? Anyways, let's start
Yeah,
moving.
what is my man watering right now?
Okay, let's not start moving. Let's look at the UI, shall we? If it wasn't made completely obvious already,
That
graphics
UI looks
design
insane.
was and clearly is Scott's passion, as you get 3 buttons on the top left corner: your bag, your plans, and your tasks. Clicking on each of them shows the respective window, and we've just been giving an introductory task to start off our adventure, judging by the urgent flashing on the task button. Why don't you try finding a tree and chomping it down? Sounds easy enough. So how do we move? Oh, we click on the arrow buttons on the screen. Look at him go. Now, if it wasn't made obvious before, you'll probably notice by now that this was originally a mobile game. Scott developed this game for iOS, Android, and Windows Phone in 2013, and now the really glossy, bright, and obnoxious buttons make a whole lot more sense. You couldn't ship a mobile game without giving people sensory overload. It's 2013, man. Back to the game, and we go over to the next screen and encounter a wood monster. A woodster? A weed? Dead wood? I don't know. And this is never really
I can see Scott was definitely destined for horror games. What the hell is that?
And give you an item. But now we gotta actually get chomping on these PNGs of wood by clicking on the axe and... Tyke that tree had a family. After completely demolishing the tree, you're then given a choice.
I think he
to
ate the
build a new
family
one
too.
Or build something from the many plans you'll be given in the game by Chipper or any of the other characters, which I'll get to in a moment. Once you've collected the wood from the tree you murdered, you have to go back to Chipper, who will make lumber for you, which you can use to build things on the areas of land which you're given. Continuing over to the left, and Tyke eventually finds himself in the den of the termites, the very things that Chipper joked about massacring. And now you're talking with one of them.
What the hell was that in my ear?
Talks to Tyke for a bit, and in the cutscene you found out that Chipper actually wasn't joking about bombing the termites and causing war crimes, because he dropped a bomb right in the middle and killed a bunch of kids. What am I playing? After he sends you off on your way, you can continue over to the left.
Scott was definitely destined for horror games.
For a trade like you're on the Steam marketplace. Obviously, you
have a Rocket League menu.
Send you right back down to continue traveling. On your journey, you'll meet various characters who'll talk about their run-ins with Chipper or something random, and they'll give you items that'll help you on your journey.
Boot.
Can I just mention that the music during these segments is a bit of a vibe?
Where does Scott get his music from?
To the left, you'll eventually find this pleasant area, and the music completely stops. This area is called the Robot Graveyard, and for a lot of people, this area has a lot of foreshadowing for Scott's future games, which I'll get into later. It's here where you'll get a reminder that this is a mobile
scary
game,
setting.
You're given a screen full of
he knows how to make a setting.
You can purchase either by playing the game or straight up buying them from the store. After you've explored everything, that's it. Good luck. For the rest of the game, your job is to just run around the areas you've been given, chomping down trees and planting new ones, and sometimes building different structures based on the plans that Chipper gives you throughout the game. There are several different locations you can find yourself in, and several characters you can talk to. And in some cases, you even get a small mini game where upon pressing the button, you get greeted in a black void by the character and start the game. These mini games seem to be a parody of those really old games people used to get in McDonald's Happy Meals, in which the game in question runs at 2 seconds per frame and rely on your hand-eye coordination to get enough
live skeleton reaction.
And you also get infinite tries as well, so you're not locked out if you fail. What I do find crazy though is that the mini games actually allow you to use your arrow keys to control the item in question.
So you can
why
use
can't we control the main protagonists of the game?
So we can use them earlier? Like what? What's going on there?
Free termite coins, which you can use to buy several upgrades to make the game go faster. Or weather events such as heavy rain, which will make trees grow faster, allowing you to collect more wood for Chipper to convert. And that's pretty much all she wrote. Once you collect enough beaver points from building structures like the lumber bots who will farm the wood for you while AFK, you'll start another cutscene with Chipper congratulating you on a job well done, and then going on another tirade against the termites. Chipper will then set you up on a date.
He really
without
hates those
your
termites.
knowledge, yay? Aren't we literally a child? Is Chipper
a
trying
date
to set his
tonight?
child up for a shotgun wedding? Is he that desperate to continue the bloodline? Calm down, Chris. So later that night, you get
bloodline
set
of
up
hating
with a completely
termites.
different species who
What
tries to
the
initiate
hell
the date
is-
with you with amazing lines such as, "You can tell I'm female because I have a bow on my head." What do you mean by that? Boys can wear girls' clothing too. It becomes increasingly apparent that this game is supposed to be a massive time sink, it being a mobile game and all.
But he's not wrong.
Every time you get enough beaver points, Chipper will increase the land made available to you and give you more tasks and blueprints you can use to build bots and structures. These bots will work while you're away and will automatically farm
that
wood
wood
for you
monster
so
on
you
the
don't
bottom
have
of the
to be
screen.
in-game. However,
It's so
the version you're
terrifying.
seeing right now is the PC edition of the game, which was released in 2015. And if I sunk enough time to do absolutely everything in the game, this video would never end, so we'll leave it at there. When Chipper and Sons was released to the general public, the reception wasn't really that great, and I can tell you exactly why. The character designs look terrifying. For a child-friendly farming game, many critics pointed to the uncanny nature of the titular character and some of the supporting casts, likening them to animatronics.
So then Scott just said screw it and made FNAF.
I think they may have a good point. All of the characters look like creepy animatronics, and you can see it in the stiff movement, the 1,000-yard stares in each and every one of the characters, and the way in which they interact with each other. This wasn't the making of a child-friendly franchise. The heavy criticism of Chipper and Son sent Scott into a depressive slump, almost discouraging him from making games entirely due to how many prominent reviewers trashed on the game. And then he had an epiphany. People ripped into him for accidentally making creepy designs in a child-friendly game. So what if we went and intentionally made creepy designs in a game that's definitely not made for kids? And that's exactly what he did when he made
The Bear, Chapter 2, Five Nights at Freddy's. That's really insane, though. Man went from being like review bombed to just making
and this is the game that truly
a whole thing.
Scott took the
Never give up.
critical hits that he got from Chipper and Sons and used the criticism to make an intentionally scary horror game with the knowledge he already knew. Whether or not he did a good job at the end of the day is what I want to delve into by the end of this video. Now, as I said before, I already covered the first 4 Five Nights at Freddy's games when I made my last
the old
video
Windows
back in
sound effects.
So going through the same things might seem incredibly repetitive.
He's really making me feel old with this video.
Recaps in order. This game basically served as the blueprint for many sequels and clones, and the premise was relatively simple. You are a security guard that's been hired on the night shift, and you are forced to maintain the entirety of a pizzeria that runs on a singular AAA second-hand Duracell battery. Upon loading the game, you're instantly thrown into things. There's no how to play section. The game expects you to get good immediately at maintaining 4 animatronics in the rooms at the back and making sure nothing happens to them. The only tutorial you're given is a recorded voice message on the phone, voiced by Scott himself, telling you that everything is okay and there's absolutely nothing to worry about. As you listen to the phone call, the guy on the phone, who was appropriately named Phone Guy, tells you that the animatronics like to get a little
quirky
in the night.
Oh Lord.
Make of that what you will, but Phone Guy reassures you that there's nothing to worry about and you should just let the animatronics wander around the pizzeria as freely as they need to. However, since this is a horror game, of course there has to be a twist in the tale. If any of the animatronics see you, they won't recognize you at all. They'll think you're one of them. If they find you, they'll try to stuff you in a suit, judging by what's shown on the game over screen. That doesn't seem too bad until you realize that the eyes on that screen are yours. So it's in your best interest to make sure that doesn't happen. From then on, your objective
like how it's subtle too.
Stop the animatronics from entering the room that you're in. You have until your shift ends at 6 AM to chill in your office and make sure this doesn't happen. But don't worry, you've been given a plethora of items to prevent yourself from an unpleasant termination of your services on a permanent level. A gun? No, don't be silly. Security guards don't need guns. It's current year. No, you're using the greatest weapon of all time.
Imagine if you actually had a gun.
The office that you're staying in seems to be yoinked straight out of the year 2002. As the backdrop is very unkempt and eerie, with several things on the desk that play into the creepy atmosphere you're thrown into starting from the first night. And that's the litter on the desk. Jesus Christ, we can't deal with that at all. There's cobwebs everywhere. Why are we here even? On the desk, there are several monitors that you're supposed to use to look at all of the animatronics.
Got the cupcake staring at you in the background too.
And it's at this point where I should probably talk about the animatronics, because that's literally the main draw of the game and the reason why you're doing what you're doing. Scott made it clear that these designs would be intentionally scary as opposed to the accidental scares and cardiac arrests he racked up in Chipper and Sons. And I honestly think he succeeded. These animatronics play into the unsettling nature of actual real-life animatronics and mascots in American restaurant lines such as Chuck E. Cheese and many more. Normally, these mascots are supposed to provide fun and comfort to children dining in the restaurant, but in Five Nights at Freddy's, the creep factor's cranked up to 12. Now, if you don't know the main 4 animatronics in the franchise by now, your boulder probably looks really, really nice. I'd like to hide under it as
harder
well.
than Patrick's rock, for real.
Watching for the first time,
how do you not know FNAF at this rate?
Again, there's Bunny. He's a purple bunny with an antique burst with guitar. He's very aggressive.
Valorant player.
Player a lot in the form of visual and audio hallucinations throughout the night.
Is Toy Freddy more than Valorant player?
He's constantly at the door to ask about your office's extended warranty. There's Chica, a yellow chicken, not a duck. This should have been obvious from the name, but people thought she was a duck. Stop it. She comes in from the right-hand side and has
I would have probably thought she was a duck too
to her hand. There's
if I had played FNAF 1 before FNAF 2.
And finally, Freddy Fazbear, the only animatronic that has a surname to let you know that he's not on first-name basis with you. You call him Mr. Fazbear. You can also click on his nose on the poster in the office for a funny little sound effect that's become a franchise staple. He's the main antagonist of the first game. which is wild to me because he isn't even a threat until night 4. Anyway, let's rewind back to the core gameplay mechanics.
And there's like a way to keep him on the stage too.
Doors. I mean, it does give you 2 ways out, but it also means that there are 2 ways for the animatronics to enter the office. But again, do not worry, the animatronics are pre-programmed to only go in one set path. The only problem is set paths are all around the
swiper on the screen.
It's your job to prevent them from getting to you. When you look in the main monitor you're given, you have a bunch of CCTV feeds you have to look at and locate the animatronics within them. At some point, either Chica or Bonnie will attempt to enter your office accompanied by a somewhat loud scare call. Instead of getting up from your current location and dragging them to the ground, you're simply asked to kindly slam the doors in their faces as fast as you can. Failure to do so will result in them jamming the doors. And if you check the monitors at any point while they're outside the office, you will hear the sound of that old man from Happy Wheels, but slowed down. Upon clicking the monitor, you'll then get...
Is that actually the sound?
You're probably thinking to yourself, this must be easy as hell then. Just keep the doors closed the entire time, right? Wrong. Because there has to be a handicap in the game to prevent you from beating the game easily, there's a power counter on the bottom left, and the more you use things in the office such as the lights, the doors, or even the cameras, the faster your power goes down. I didn't know this pizzeria was manufactured by Samsung. If the power runs out, you better hope you are near the end of your shift, or else Freddy himself will show up accompanied by the most iconic jingle in the entire franchise.
Look, you can see his mouse cursor. It's just crazy to think that this was really Scott's like all or nothing plan. It just worked.
It's so dark. I wonder if a jump scare is gonna happen. As each night progresses, all of the animatronics start to get a little more aggressive, and the guy on the phone continues to give you advice about how to survive the night all the way up until night 4, where he forgets to buy a top-up card and his credit runs out.
Wow.
Somehow he returns the very next night and is taking up Mongolian throat singing as a hobby.
Mongolian throat singing? Nah, not the Doctor Who aliens on the screen.
Each night gets progressively harder as the hours keep ticking down, and since this game is called Five Nights at Freddy's, you have to do this a total of 7 times. But nothing to fear, if you manage to survive until the end of night 5, you win! Yeah! Yeah!
It's like KSI. Oh my gosh, man.
Yes! Oh my god! For all the trauma you've been through, you're probably expected to be given a lot of compensation for the damage to your mental health that's been dealt. And you're given a grand total of $120. Well, I guess you gotta work some overtime then. If you're masochistic enough,
like that job is only for Michael. You cannot live.
Only to punish you. And after going through several attempts trying to beat the 6th night, you get commended for being a valuable.
No one can live doing this job, bro.
An extra
I need more money for that.
50 cents. Wow. Gee, thanks, boss. I really appreciate it. But
like, bro, 50 cents for surviving that for 7 days is crazy.
As easy or as difficult as you like. Some people decide to punish themselves even further by doing the hardest possible mode in the game, named 420 or 2020 mode. This makes the animatronics disgustingly difficult to defeat. Since there are several videos documenting the exact mathematics behind the game's code, nowadays this challenge is relatively easy as people now have a better understanding as to how the game works, which is a point I'll get to later. When you're playing these difficult modes, it becomes apparent that the game is also a massive micromanaging simulator similar to Chipper and Sons, because of the amount of things you need to keep tabs on throughout, to the point that the security guard is definitely getting good exercise and reflex practice.
Where did this video come from?
From the monitor and shutting the doors. This gets much worse as the series continues.
I've seen the video a lot on Twitter.
I'm getting a bit too ahead of myself. Now you've completely finished the game, however, the management have no use for you, and you get fired for being a sweaty gamer. The end. I felt it prudent to talk about the mechanics of the game because this context is important before explaining why the game was so scary at the time of release. In 2014, Five Nights at Freddy's provided something different to the horror game community. As a genre, there are a lot of different things that can scare the player, but most games that were released in this time period all had one constant about them, and that was the fact that there was a way to escape the predicament you've landed yourself in. In indie games like Slender and SCP Containment Breach, you're given the option to escape by either collecting pages or collecting keycards while avoiding monsters. And and the monsters in question could easily be evaded even if you were defenseless. If you saw a creepy thing at the end of the hallway, you'd turn 360 degrees and moonwalk out of the room. Five Nights at Freddy's, on the other hand, took things one step further, and not only
trapped
were
you
you
right in
completely
the room
defenseless for the entirety of the game's runtime, but you also had no way of evading your fate. The game worked in such a way that you were only delaying the inevitable. You couldn't run out of the office with a blicky and the knuckle duster and take the animatronics.
Oh my god, he's soloing the animatronics.
The way that the game was programmed. FNAF was made using the Click Team Fusion engine, and as such is a point-and-click horror game where you're stationary in one spot and have to prevent yourself from getting jump scared. And that's it. Your only weapon at your disposal is your reflexes, especially on later
Wait
nights.
for green.
On launch, the animatronics were seemingly unpredictable in nature. There were no tutorials that showed up on screen during the game warning you where Bonnie or Chica would come from. Phone Guy is the only way to learn how the game works
Gosh,
at launch.
the eye on
Nowadays,
the
you have
phone.
Wikipedia and a plethora of videos made by YouTubers explaining almost exactly how the game works down to the odds in which the characters will show up at the door, and exactly what you need to do to survive each night. Back then though, all you had was the voicemails left for you. The animatronics were seemingly unpredictable, teleporting around the place, getting closer and closer to the office until you're forced to shut the doors. And even then, shutting the doors doesn't save you, because there are some instances in which animatronics can get into your office, but the odds are incredibly low. So low in fact that I forgot to mention that this game has a story. There's a hidden animatronic in the game that's basically Freddy Fazbear, but piss-colored, and he has no eyes.
Piss-colored?
Freddy. Looking into a specific camera
The most complicated story in the world.
A poster will change into a picture of Golden Freddy, and upon closing the monitor, you only have a few seconds to open it back because Golden Freddy is in the room. If you don't do that, you get jump scared and your game crashes. This is one of many random events that Scott coded into the game to play into the creepy atmosphere. In my opinion, I honestly think this first game is the best in the franchise in terms of scares and what it provided in the grand scheme of things. I've talked about this in countless videos, but I think the best way to execute horror concepts is not over-explaining things. The moment you start overcomplicating your concept with convoluted lore or over-explanations for things is the moment things stop getting creepy, in my opinion. The scariest possible thing to anyone is their own imagination, so leaving things up for interpretation is always the best way to execute horror concepts. And that's what the first game did so well. The only story beats that were given to anyone at all at this point was all in the ambience and the voicemails left by Phone Guy, mentioning things like the Bite of 87, another big franchise staple. Not to mention the grungy aesthetic of the pizzeria and the claustrophobia that came with being
the
in what
worst
was
theories in the
essentially a
world
cramped
came after
office
that.
space. It just worked back then. The animatronics designs also lended themselves to creepy visuals and ambience and forced players to start questioning just why are all the animatronics so quirky at night? Why are they after the player?
What was
Why
that?
do the animatronics sound like they're being
You
possessed when they
twerking?
sneak in the office? Why does the term "it's me" show up randomly and rarely in the hallways and Pirate Cove and in various hallucinations around the game? What's the deal with airline food? If you expect the unexpected, doesn't that make the unexpected expected? These type of questions gave away to a lot of theories about
that was
what
so
the secrets
complicated.
behind
My
the
brain is,
pizzeria
like,
are, for better
messed
and
up.
worse. The game was also ambiguous enough to give small hints to the answers to some of these questions with some hidden Easter eggs and rare screens, including one that shows up in the custom night. Curious individuals would probably try to set the difficulty sliders on each of the animatronics to 1987 as a callback to the Bite of 87 that Phone Guy mentions earlier in the game.
That's crazy,
You
and then
probably
Scott
thought
just
you're the
leaves a
smartest
whole
person in the
jump
world
scare
for figuring
bomb.
out a way to swindle the game into giving you more information, and the game rewards you as such. Another thing that adds to the major scare factor of
Like,
the
why would
first game
Scott
is
do
the
that? He
sound
had no
design.
reason.
There's something eerie about being stuck in an office all night with the only sound being the electronics in the room and the hollow rumbling of the animatronics either getting closer or your own hallucinations playing tricks on you. I would go further into the music cues and the ambience of the first game alone, but there's a video that goes into a lot of detail about this, and I'll put it in the description.
And
it will show
I think
up
I
in the
definitely
top right
watched
corner
that
of the
before,
screen again.
too.
The point I'm trying to
Yeah,
make
how
before
audio
moving on to the
enhances.
rest of
Yeah,
the
that was a good
franchise is
video.
that the scare factor in the first game was the perfect storm for what would arrive in the future. And I've gone this long without mentioning what is arguably one of the biggest franchise staples and the second thing that people discuss surrounding Five Nights at Freddy's. And that's the jump scares. Now, jump scares
The
are not
KSI
scary.
and
It's the horror
Comedy
equivalent
Shorts
of
gamer
tickling someone
videos
and
are just
telling them you made
hilarious.
them
Them
laugh.
be in the corner.
Stop it. In the first Five Nights at Freddy's game, the jump scares, while obnoxious, also heightened the tension throughout the game as they were implemented as a consequence of you being a bad gamer or being screwed by RNG. As such, a lot of the tension in the game stems from you as a player preventing yourself from getting jump scared. It's the cheap way of increasing tension, but in the likely case that you're a god gamer and never get jump scared once, then the rare screens and the ambience are there as what is essentially a backup source of paranoia for you. Obviously, the more you play the game, the less
Playtime
scary the jump
22
scares
hours.
become, and they would turn into a source of frustration instead, especially in the harder difficulties such as 2020 mode, where getting jump scared goes from
Markiplier.
Two.
Foxy's out, which is dumb because I was. Oh God, no! Fuck me!
As opposed to
Yeah.
other horror games and even future
That's how it
games in
turned
this
to
very
with a
franchise
security
where
breach.
jump scares are randomly sprinkled in the game as bait, getting jump scared in the
What the heck was
original
that?
FNAF game is entirely your fault. And if you strip the concept of the game to the bare minimum, I guess
That's
you
an
could
old
say
video.
it's a jump scare simulator in which you prevent yourself
Jump
from
Scare
getting
Simulator
the jump
XD.
scares. When FNAF was released to the general public, it pretty much became an overnight sensation and saved Scott's career. I'm going to sneeze. Hang on. All of the aspects of the game design I mentioned so far, as well as the fact
Something
that
like that hurt.
something new to the indie horror game and even the general horror game community, caused it to really skyrocket in popularity. The popularity of the franchise can also be credited to YouTubers making videos playing through the game, with Markiplier being a massive catalyst for the success of the game. His first episode of Five Nights at
The
Freddy's now
GOAT.
sits at a comfortable 100 million views as of writing this video, which is
Wow.
insane for a regular gaming video, let alone a horror let's play. While it was incredibly influential, the game did not have any replay value once all the secrets had been found, and interest in the game would wane as soon as people move on to the next big thing. But
Flappy
Scott had
Bird.
other plans, as just a few months later, he came back with
Teasers. And that's a Freddy's 2. Man.
Five
The
Nights
best
at
one-
Freddy's
the
2
best one in
was
the
released on
franchise, by the
November
way.
11,
FNAF 2 is the
2014,
best.
right off the presses of the
Hands
first
down.
game. Scott was not going to let the cultural zeitgeist that was Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria leave everyone's minds that quickly. So off he went to make the next game, teasing FNAF fans with a promo
this
image
footage.
just 1 month after the release of the first game. Obviously, with the success of FNAF 1, he was going to have to move into the field of agriculture with the amount of milking and beating he was about to do. When you load into FNAF 2 for the first time, instead
Wow.
of what you'd assume to be the main menu, you get greeted with an introductory cutscene showing a room full of people excited about a new Bendy game, and moving your mouse to
Wow.
the left and to the right shows Bonnie and Chico on either side of the room, just standing there.
Wow, man, nah.
Menacingly.
That
After a couple
was nah. Nah, that was fucked up. That was fucked up. I just that was
seconds, the
No,
game
that was
pushes out
fucked.
some stutters before throwing
That
you
was
right
fucked
into the
up.
main menu. And it's at this point where you'll immediately realize that this game really ups the ante from the first game.
That's
It's
messed
as if
up.
this game is the first
I'm still
game.
stuck on the
But
joke.
there are 3 characters in the menu, for God's sake. This game is absolutely loaded. Before you start questioning your life decisions and what led you to this moment, you're off on your first night once again. It's not 1, it's 12 a.m. in the morning. And immediately there are lots of differences between the first game and this one. And the first one is the fact that the office is much bigger than before. Looks like the Freddy Fazbear building
Bro, how do we go to a
association got
bigger
anyways
office but we
because
get no
the office
doors?
Definitely seems more spacious than before. But again, since this is a horror game, there has to be a catch. And the most immediate catch is that there are absolutely no doors, and a wide open hallway that any animatronic can sprint down. And 2 vents on either side. Okay, we need to seriously be investigating
Like, why
the architects
vents?
behind each of these locations. Why are there so many possible ways for the security guard to get killed? But there's no time to worry about all of that because you're instantly greeted with a pleasant surprise. Phone guy manages to buy a pay-as-you-go add-on, and he's returned to give you advice.
I just realized, bro has 2 vents, but he has a fan in front of him. 2 open vents. Bro, why did we never question that? Like, do they pump heat through the vents, or do they turn on the AC? Well, like, clearly they don't turn on the AC if he has a fan in front of him, right? Bro, but have you ever questioned that though? Like,
And welcome you to the
New and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
The phone guy also mentions a lot of things about the old location, such as the fact that it was left to rot quite a while, and there are lots of rumors circulating about just how safe it would be there, which if you played the first game would be extremely valid.
nah, okay, I'm sorry. I know I said I'm not gonna pause too much, but like, I thought about what I was thinking about earlier. It's like, sure, if heat was on, do you think he's really about to get up with those animatronics and turn on the AC? Nah, I would buy myself a mini desk fan just to leave there every day, because I'm not gonna get up and turn the thermostat down just so I can get my throat eaten by
That
Foxy.
would hint at this being set as a sequel, right? Right? When you look
Oh
at
my
the
gosh.
monitors for the very first time, you'll notice that the animatronics
I've never seen the
look
face
a
frown
little
before.
new? They've been infected with the iOS 6 syndrome, where the big trend was to make
iOS
everything
6.
glossy and polished, while the older animatronics have been left to rot and look
Dang,
absolutely
iOS 6? I don't
grotesque.
remember iOS
You'll
6.
also notice a couple of extra things in the CCTV that didn't exist in the first game, such as the fact that you can shine a light into every room to at least see where the potential enemies could appear, and a brand new game mechanic, the music box. In simple terms, the music box is there to give you more stress throughout the night, as it's constantly ticking down every single night, and it won't stop ticking down unless you wind it remotely. Failure to wind up the music box results in an automatic death. So if you want a clarification as to just how screwed you are, not only do you have to watch a plethora of
fucked are you?
animatronics and a security camera, you also have to listen for several audio cues throughout the night. You need to shine a flashlight down an empty hallway toward a fox who makes a return in this game. You need to shine a light into the two vents on either side of you just in case any animatronics
Spy on the vents for any imposters.
There's another new game mechanic that's supposed to keep you on your feet so you don't have your life contract terminated post-haste. The mask. If any animatronic is remotely near your room, you have to put it on and it will fool every animatronic into thinking you're one of them. Except Foxy, who will still come down the corridor. And you still need to make sure the puppet is wound up or it's an instant death. Remember how I mentioned the micromanaging you have to do in the first game becomes so much worse as the franchise continues? Well, this game takes that concept and cranks it up to 15, as instead of just 4 animatronics you have to keep tabs on, you have 10. Since Scott was feeling nice, however, he decided to have some of the animatronics warm the bench and put them out of action some of the night so that the game doesn't bombard you with constant jump scares every time you play. I'll get to the jump scares a little
This would be the
later,
most stressing
but I think it's
FNAF
probably
if
time
he
to
didn't
address
do
the
that
big
for real,
elephant
for
in the
real.
room and talk about some of the questionable design decisions for some of the animatronics this time around. Now, this is a
Questionable?
comment on internet culture more than anything, but I think FNAF 2's scare factor in the animatronics alone is significantly smaller than that of the first game. Now, don't get me wrong, I think the game does tension really, really well and balances things with the more withered version of the animatronic seen in the first game. But the new toy animatronics were not really that scary.
Yeah, they just like kind of go up in your face.
Hey, you need to leave!
The first game had that uncanny valley aesthetic to the animatronics. It was something Scott played into perfectly, because the grunginess and the 1,000-yard stares that each of the animatronics had really sold the creepy factor when the going started to get tough. In the second game, however, the puppet was really creepy, and maybe Mangle. But as for the originals, well, whether or not it was actually
I don't know, man. If you see Mangle for
we'll
the first
never
time,
really
you probably
know.
crap your
But I'm
pants.
99% sure someone slipped
The
up
puppet's
aphrodisiac in
horrible,
Scott's holy
terrifying.
water, because the way he described these animatronics in the first 2 games certainly was a little suspicious.
Now that being said, no new system is without its kink. Animatronic characters here do get a bit quirky at night.
Maybe Toy Chica taking her beak off was supposed to be a little creepy originally, but look at those proportions! What's Scott's expecting? Moving on to the jump scares in the game, and they do make a return. Some of them
not the
are
return
better
of the
than
blasphemous
others, but with the
HD
amount
clip.
of animatronics in the game, the tension that comes from preventing yourself from getting jump scared is increased tenfold. And some of the jump scares are really, really lame. The point I made earlier in the video about jump scares being a cheat. The point I made
I'm
earlier
sorry.
in
The
video
editing
about
is just
jump
really
scares
good.
being
This
a
guy
cheap
is-
way of getting a scare out of someone is definitely valid here, because some jump scares,
this
in
kind of
particular
creator is
Golden
just
Freddy's
great.
one, just
I don't know what
involves
else
a
to say.
PNG flying towards the camera with a really loud sound. That's just bollocks. Anyone can do a scare like that. Here, I'll do it right now.
Is he using Minecraft? I can't tell if it's Minecraft or not. My monitor is very dark. I need to brighten this thing up. Oh no, it's definitely. How loud is it gonna be though?
Exactly. It just doesn't work. There's already plenty of paranoia
Did
fuel
I
in the
scare
game, so
you?
having the animatronics just tackle you to the ground with a loud noise really does nothing except provide plenty of tinnitus for the young kids playing the game. Or not playing the game and watching another YouTuber play it because they're too scared to play it themselves. Ah, this reminds me. While working on this video, I decided to play through all the games again from scratch, and you can watch the series
Wow.
on my second channel, which will show up around here and will be linked in the description. So if
That's-
you want to
that
watch
is
a
crazy.
2021 revisiting of the franchise, yes, I said 2021.
I've been working
It's taken
on
me
this video
long
for
to
a
work on
very
the
long
video,
time.
then head on over to my second channel, T9, to watch more from
Go
it.
do it.
Back to
Go
the
do
game
it.
once again,
Go
and your
subscribe to
mission
this
as the
person.
Night Guard is exactly the
Seems like
same
a very
as the
great
first
content
game.
creator.
Survive until 6 AM, whatever the cost. Since
Current
having the power
objective,
counter like the
survive.
first game will be pretty overkill, jail. Instead, you're asked to...
Which, I'm sorry, I know. Which game brought that up, though? Like, Mission Objective Survive? Like, which one turned it into the big meme? Like, I know a lot of games do it, but, like, which one was the game that turned Mission Objective Survive into a meme? Let me know if you know.
Temper your usage of the flashlight, as it's imperative to flash Foxy in the hallway to prevent him from entering the office. Because Foxy
actually
likes to be flashed.
I think that was Halo Reach.
This, you have some new characters such as
it might be Reach,
Boy, who only exist to ruin your day. If you let him in the office, he will render your flashlight unusable. So you
and your
hope
ears
near 6 a.m. or else
they render your ears useless too.
You get thrown
with
into
the laughing.
Just
want to rip your ears off. Hearing Balloon Boy laugh.
You're seemingly looking through Freddy's eyes at Chica or Bonnie on either side. And as the nights progress, different things start happening, such as them suddenly looking at you, Golden Freddy appearing, and the puppet blocking their vision. By the time you get to night 5, you might as well be playing Osu with Parkinson's while sitting on a taser, because the amount of micromanaging of every single animatronic under the sun is insane.
Not this streamer, bro. He's always loud.
A paycheck of $100 for your hard work over
$20 less. Crazy.
I'm going to devour the rich. 2 games in, and we've been grossly underpaid. Why am I still here? If you look closely at the paycheck you've been given, you'll notice that it's dated 12th of November 1987 or the 11th of December 1987. I don't care. The point is, if it hadn't been made obvious by some of the hints throughout the game, such as the animatronics being able to walk around during the day and the fact that Phone Guy is still alive, this game is indeed a prequel to the first game. Which is really confusing because the Phone Guy specifically mentions improvements to the office that were drawbacks in the first game, like the mention of no doors and unlimited power. In fact,
I'm thinking about the lore, it'll drive you insane. You turn to the map pad.
I thought this was supposed to be a summer job for 1 week. Why am I getting my check at the end of the year? What's going on? If you're somehow crazy enough to go for overtime, you get a bonus paycheck of $20.10. Wow, I can buy an Xbox 720 with that money. That aside,
Xbox 720
confirms that this
crazy
is a
leak
prequel to the first, as the pizzeria closes down at the end of the game, and he mentions that he's going to be taking the night shift himself whenever the restaurant opens again, leading into the events right before the first game. Interestingly enough, at the end of the 7th playable night in game, where you're able to edit the difficulty of each and every one of the animatronics, you get fired from your job for being a sweaty gamer once
now get
again.
out.
However, eagle-eyed viewers would notice that the slip you've been given is addressed to a completely different person than the guard you're playing as up until this point. Which is also weird because technically speaking, this should be his first day on the job. And yet there were no phone calls from Phone Guy. The story is starting to get a little bit confusing to follow, but there's several features in FNAF 2 to help people theorize or put their own pieces of lore together, such as the mini games that sometimes show up upon getting jump scared, where you're guiding some of the animatronics throughout this 8-bit section of the game, complete with
man, this was Scott's first time doing 8-bit stuff too.
These give small hints as to what the story of the game so far
entails, his first time doing it for FNAF at least.
Alright then. Again, people did enjoy the game on launch, but the issues of the game having little to no replay value still remained. And there were some people even complaining about the difficulty in managing so many different things at once, which is something Scott's games have all asked of the player to do, even as far back as Chipper and Sons Lumber.
Skill issue, I ain't gonna lie to you. FNAF 2 is so easy once you get used to it. You should be used to it by FNAF 3.
The franchise was starting to balloon in popularity. Several fan games had started development, something which I'll get into later. And Scott set out to answer some of the many questions people had surrounding the story when he released.
Like, that's the only reason why I like FNAF 2, because, like, basically, lift up the camera, go to Puppet's camera, lift up the, or turn up the Puppet meter, put your mask down as you put down the camera, look left and right and front. It's just such an easy thing to do. Oh.
Okay, I'm just kidding. Before I get into the game itself, I wanted to quickly talk about a topic that surrounds the games that will become very relevant as the video goes on, and that's the marketing. Some people will call the fast releases between FNAF games milking, while others will call it capitalizing on the popularity of your IP.
I call it a grind.
Also be called milking, I guess. Anyway, Scott's way of marketing games,
Scott was on his stuff. Something worked and he just kept going at it.
Something that really heightened the creep factor and kept FNAF
I can't really blame him for it
throughout the development cycle of each of the games. Most of the teasers were
no, because like I think I remember a time where Scott was talking about how he like used to work at a store and all that stuff, and it was like right in between like FNAF 4 and 3 being a thing. So I mean, yeah, like anybody who's seeing their series getting so much like attention and money off of it, like I'm pretty sure you would do it. I'm pretty sure you would just capitalize right on it. You'd make like 4 games right when your other games weren't working. You know?
Posted on Scott's website.
People are going to capitalize off stuff, grind on
just
it.
Regular images or screenshots from the next game in the series. Most of the time,
I can't really blame him. I can't say anything bad about it. He was just on his shit.
Next game. But Scott
and it
took
worked
things
out
one step
in the end.
further by hiding things in any new photo that showed up on the website, either in the website's code or on the image itself. Brightening some of the teasers get you some interesting tidbits for the next game. This turned FNAF FANS into detectives, looking into every last nook and cranny of Scott's website to see secrets that would hint at future games in the franchise.
FNAF 3 really start
FNAF
the
3
whole
is where this all came to a head, as there were several teasers that randomly showed up on the site in the build-up to Five Nights at Freddy's 3's release, such as an offline teaser that, when brightened, would show a big fat 3 on the bottom right corner, and this teaser of some toys in a box that looks normal and ominous at first until you brighten it and you notice, oh
no, not this time.
Oh wow, he really caught that.
So let's get to the game itself, shall we? First things first, this game really loves to use a lot of the green in its aesthetic, and the office you're staying in is wildly different to any of the games thus far because you're literally in a horror attraction. Yes, that's right. Based on the mysteries of the original pizzeria, some fellas decided to make a horror attraction with the animatronics that exist solely to scare your socks off. Whether it did a good job in this game is debatable, but your mission is made clear. Survive once again until 6 a.m. Now, you'd think it being a horror attraction would make this game infinitely scarier than previous outings. I mean, the entire point of this place is to scare, so surely it would do a great job in freaking you out.
I guess not to him.
Compared to the previous games where there were literally millions of animatronics after you and any mistake would end your life, this game only has one. Who the hell is he? Doesn't really look like a bear to me unless I'm stupid. And I'm not stupid! This lovely specimen is called Springtrap. That sounds like a music genre. If you don't know who he is, don't worry, neither do I. But all you need to know is that he's the only animatronic in the game and the only danger you have to face in the entirety of the game's playtime. Sort of. Once you load into the first night, you get called by a more laid-back and upbeat version of Phone Guy, who was very fittingly named Phone Dude. He will welcome you to the horror attractions office, and on night 1, you're tasked with familiarizing yourself with the way the cameras work in this game. Unlike the previous 2 games, you have the option to play audio in any of the characters and are also given access to vent cameras that you can seal. These can all malfunction, however, and you will have to reboot them if they do malfunction. However,
the
you won't have
reboot
to do
system.
this at all on night 1, making this one of the most boring nights of the entire franchise, where you can literally go AFK and nothing more would happen. On night 2, however, that's when the game actually begins, so technically this game's title is clickbait because you're only spending 4 nights at Freddy's. Why are we even questioning this? Springtrap is discovered on this night, so from this night onwards, your main goal is to prevent Springtrap from entering the office through
social
any means
distance
necessary.
from Bunny.
Failure to do so will result in you getting jump scared. And his jump scare is one of the lamest in the franchise thus far, as all he does is walk towards you with a shit-eating grin on his face. You will also find that there are several hallucinations throughout the game caused by ventilation errors that just so happen to occur.
Now, see, honestly, the Phantoms will scare the hell out of you if you didn't.
Associated with Freddy Fazbear at this point is doomed to have some technical errors. What if I name my PC Freddy Fazbear? Will it just malfunction? If your reflexes are not fast enough, you get a very obvious warning before you're jump scared. Freddy will just slink across the glass outside your room, and looking at him for too long.
Is there any way to avoid Phantom Freddy, by the way?
Balloon Boy can appear on any camera, and if he does, you only have around 2 seconds to get rid of him by switching cameras, or he'll jump scare you. Foxy can randomly show up in your room, and he can jump scare you if you just look at him, so ignoring him is your best shot here. And if you see the puppet in your monitor camera, it can also jump scare you. None of these jump scares actually end the game, but they will cause a severe malfunction of either the vents, the camera, or the audio, and you have to reboot them all in order to continue surviving. This is a massive source of frustration for many people who played the game on release or are even replaying it now, as the buttons just do not work. It wasn't enough that the building's core functions are prone to malfunctioning regularly. Apparently, this tech runs on Windows Vista because
just
it takes
staring
so
outside the
bloody long
window
to do anything, and you'll be clicking like a madman trying to make things work. Springtrap himself is essentially a little value xenomorph, as he's attracted by sound, so you've got to play audio either in the room he's in or in the room next to him, so he isolates as far from the office as possible. And if he manages to get into the vents, you have to seal the vent he's in as fast as possible before he makes a beeline to your office. And I mean a literal beeline.
And then I wonder, it's like all the animatronics go back to their place at 6 a.m. We always assume that. Springtrap is the killer inside of the suit. So it's William Afton. It's technically a human. William Afton doesn't need to sleep. He's not an animatronic. So where does William go after 6 a.m.? Does he just let Michael leave the building?
He can be on one side of the building and suddenly he's zooming across your monitor screen or just peeking into the office from the outside. Seems like he's too much of a pussy to come into the office to chat shit. Well, the game forces him into the office.
No, he's just staring at his son through the door.
Will cause you to have blackouts, which gives him the perfect opportunity.
He wants his revenge.
This game will quickly become a boring slog between nights, as all you have to do is keep an eye on Springtrap, and if he moves, you call him back to a camera further away from you, making this probably the easiest game in the franchise, as there's no micromanaging whatsoever. You can just play tennis with Springtrap's location until the end of the night. However, it is the end of the nights that provide the main reason why people like this game so much, and it's the story. In between each night, there's a mini game that you have to play that explains the story of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria and why the animatronics in the first game do what they do. There are several videos out there that have summarized the story.
That final night animation, man.
Headcanons and lore dumps, but I think I probably have the simplest
Created so many William Afton Springtrap scenes.
So I'm just going to play it again. All the animatronics in the franchise are possessed by kids that have been killed before. The murderer is the Purple Man. Each night shows the Purple Man killing another kid, and in the final night, they have a Gamers Rise Up moment and trap the Purple Man.
Gamers Rise Up moment.
To kill him at the end. You see? Easy explanation. But I'll elaborate a tiny bit anyway to fill in some extra gaps because this will become relevant moving forward in the video. This purple guy, who was named Purple Guy, creative naming conventions, I know, was a serial killer. Before I continue, I know the
his names now is William Afton.
Going to start crying in the comments. Actually, that's not what he is. He's the CEO, robot inventor man thing, who's the author of all of our pain and the reason why the entire franchise. Shut up! I'm talking about the story as of the release of this game, and I think the story is bollocks anyway. I said it! Anyway, Purple Guy was seen in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but during the minigames where you see a purple car pull up behind a crying child, and after doing something with the child that caused them to cry even harder, all their life points hit 0 and they turn grey, hinting at what Purple Guy did.
He kills.
On each of the nights, all of the animatronics one by one are led
I don't think you've seen it because of my camera, but he wrote he
killed
killed
them. They encounter an area where they're not allowed to go without the game stuttering. On night 5, each of the victims of the slaughter corner Purple Guy, and he tries to run away from them, choosing to hide in a yellow suit. Obviously, this doesn't work because this is a Freddy Fazbear related product, so malfunctions would obviously be likely. This then leads into the spring lock mechanism, mentioned by Phone Guy during the nights, failing and him getting crushed inside it. And Springtrap was born. Upon seeing this cutscene, you will get 2 possible endings. If you play through the game normally without doing anything extra throughout the night, you will get the bad ending, showing that the spirits in each of the animatronics are still rampant. However, if you are inquisitive enough to search everything in the game as far as tapping tiles on the office building corresponding to notes you find on a previous night, which is a crazy attention to detail, you will get the good ending, showing that all the souls have been put to rest and the mysteries behind the original pizzeria have finally been revealed, leaving only one more loose end to solve. But again, we're getting too ahead of ourselves. When this game was released, the reception was mixed. Most people pointed to the lame jump scares and the boring gameplay loop as causes for concern, but audiences unanimously agreed that this was a somewhat satisfying.
So is that why Scott added a voice for Springtrap?
Click horror games. Most fans point to Springtrap as being one of the most well-designed antagonists and animatronics in the entire franchise. And you know what? I agree. Springtrap was the
Springtrap's the best
step in trying to make the animatronics creep.
Like, it was just the best form of William Afton we ever got. I'm sorry, the Scrap Trap, the Burn Trap's okay because it kind of looks like Springtrap actually. Scrap Trap, I love Scott, so I ain't gonna say anything rude. I'm not gonna say anything too rude, but no,
creepy,
it didn't work.
Especially considering the
Scrap
complete
Trap didn't work.
opposite was the case with the toy animatronics in a previous game. Even though the uncanny valley nature
Scott's
of
the man. I can't say anything too mean, but Scrap Trap didn't work.
Scariest things the franchise had to offer. Springtrap himself and the baggage he brought to Five Nights at Freddy's proved a fan favorite, and fans wished for more of him. But sometimes things are better left alone for now.
Not the box, man.
Wait, that's the wrong game.
Well, here we go. FNAF 4. Dang, it hasn't even been an hour and he's already at FNAF 4. Just goes to show you, like,
Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was released on July
the minimal
23rd,
history
2015, and
between the
before I even
first
talk
4
about
games.
the game, I wanted to mention that this game was slated as the final chapter of Five Nights at Freddy's. Before the game was released,
What a good
most
laugh
of the
that
loose ends
was.
about the story were already
The final
pretty much
chapter.
wrapped up, such as why the animatronics in the original games are so hell-bent on annihilating the player. Technically speaking, the final loose end that still needed to be discovered was what in the hell the fabled Bites of 87 was. And with the promotional material for the game seemingly focusing on a whodunit type mystery, there seemed to be a sense of finality with this game.
Holy shit! Not the Premiere Pro timeline of all the assets. That was definitely not the end. If only it was.
Some fans were critical of the gameplay mechanics of the previous game, and others are not really that scared playing the game. Scott decided
You
that
put a lot
enough is
into this
enough.
video.
I'm gonna make the animatronics really scary now. And you've probably already seen them from when I was talking about the promotional material, but he took the original animatronic designs from the first game and really cranked things up to 200. All the animatronics got run through the symbiote filter and look like more monstrous versions of themselves. Look how many Freddy's are just molded onto Freddy's skin. These animatronics are certified.
Forgot, are they called Freddy's or
grotesque.
Freddles?
Interestingly enough,
Grotesque.
upon opening the game, you can already tell that this game's going to be wildly different from any of its
there
predecessors.
blue stars in the
As
game?
Instead of an animatronic showing up in the main menu, which was the cases in FNAFs 1 through 3, you have a rather simple menu of a house in the distance, and all around the menu you have what can only be described as an amalgamation of animatronic parts. You can tell that Scott really tried to make this game really different to the previous games in the franchise. These particular versions of the main animatronics are fittingly named Nightmares, and the reason why they're called Nightmares is because of the main character and the protagonist of this specific game, and we get introduced to him upon beginning the very first night. Instead of a security guard that's ridiculously underpaid, overworked, and defenseless, we're playing as a little boy who can't stop crying. His birthday party's in a couple of days, and he has a deathly fear of the restaurant near his house, only finding solace in his plushies who provide comfort for him. This isn't a bad thing. I know some of you have my plushies.
I hope you're treating them well.
What becomes an issue is his older brother and his friends really don't like him and take every opportunity to jump scare him at random points throughout the mini games. We'll
His
talk
brother was
more
kind of
about
a
the rest of
dick.
them later, but right now
I wonder
we're
if that was
starting a
Michael.
new night, and whoa! This game is different, to say the least. Instead of the typical office environment, you're now tasked with surviving in your own massive room that somehow has 2 possible entrances. This room is large as hell. Crossing from one side to the other is going to take ages.
The
There's
Nightmare
no time
House
to
was
fret, though, as
convenient
you
for the
have to get familiar
animatronics.
with the gameplay mechanics as fast as you can, and as you've already noticed, there is no phone guy to help you. There are also no monitors either, so how are you supposed to know if an animatronic is coming? The answer to that question
I feel bad for him. He's gonna get somebody in the comments. Technically, you can hear the phone guy in the background.
is one of the most divisive game mechanics the franchise has ever conjured up. You have to use your ears. No, wait, don't cut them off! This game relies a lot on 3D sound, and it's pretty much a requirement to have headphones on to play this game, otherwise you will end up failing. The animatronic behavior
Or you can go the coward's route like I did when I played the game and turn up your headphones only when you go up to the door. Because they can only get in if you let them in.
FNAF 4 is similar to the original game in that Bonnie comes in from the left and Chica comes in from the right. You have to crank your volume all the
Because
way up to 200%
I am
because
scared.
you will hear footsteps either on your left or on your right, signaling their arrival. If one of them gets near to the door, you have to run to it. When I say run, what you're actually doing is dragging your face across the carpet. Once you've arrived at the door, the game will hold your hand up first and tell you this since there's no phone guy, but you're not supposed to shine a light in immediately like the other games in the series because doing so will... Oh, nothing happened. Oopsie daisy. Joking aside, this is where having your volume up is important, as you're supposed to listen very carefully for breathing in your ear. If you do hear it, you have to slam the door immediately, as that means an animatronic is right outside. Once you're sure they're gone, you have to run back to the middle of the room. And
I never understood that. What's the little flashing that happens after the animatronic leaves down the hallway? Is that his vision? Is that like the dream fading away? Or is that like the flashlight on the other side of the room flickering?
repeat all night. This game takes the frantic gameplay from all the previous games in the franchise and turns it on its head, forcing you to slow down, as rushing to any of the doors could prove fatal in this game. Looking around this BAR, also known as Big Ass Room, and you'll notice a closet in the middle. This closet contains nothing. For now, looking behind you and there's a bed with a Freddy plushie, and of course, As is custom for Five Nights at Freddy's, you can click on the nose for a honk. As
Oh,
you
they
play
mentioned
through
the Easter
night,
egg.
you're supposed
Nice.
to balance looking behind you and looking through the doors, as if you don't look behind you enough, these things will begin to show up. Failure to look at the plushie will result in it getting really, really angry and assaulting you off the bed. And now comes the talk about the one thing that people give this game a lot of bad rep for, and sometimes good rep, really depending on the person you talk to, the jump scares. Sometime during the development of the game,
The
Scott
blasphemous
must have messed up
HD
with some
clip.
developers at Valve because they clearly collaborated to make a noise that would destroy your entire neighborhood. Because of the way the game mechanics work, you would have to have your volume up extremely high so you can hear the cues for the animatronics breathing down your neck, which would become a major issue in some cases where the game would be really quiet and you may guess incorrectly. One thing I failed
My
to mention
gosh,
is
is
that
that
sometimes you
loud?
see glimpses of the animatronics
Well, then
in the
again, I
hallway,
always turn
but
down
if
my
you guess
audio, so I
incorrectly
wouldn't
and
know.
Shut the door too early, or when there's no breathing, the animatronics will make a beeline to the door, and when you open it and shine your flashlight, your ears will start bleeding. And unlike the previous games where upon death you're greeted with static, this game is definitely darker and edgier because you just get a whole lot of blood on the screen. You're not even safe in your
your
own
face
room
got
either,
eaten.
as Foxy could run into the room at any time and you have to check on him in the closet periodically. Same goes for any of the other animatronics. For some reason, you're just unable to close the doors and lock them. The Freddy Fazbear curse of malfunctioning objects strikes again, as this house seems to lack any locks on the doors. I mean,
Did they
that would
abbreviate
make the
it with
game
that edit? That was
ridiculously easy,
amazing.
wouldn't it? It also seemed like this was the game that Scott decided that absolutely everything should jump scare you, as Chica doesn't enter the room if you end up failing to check on her, instead electing to have a cupcake infiltrate the room instead. What? The nights in FNAF 4 aren't even that long compared to the other games as well.
Scott
as
is a
each
troll.
hour lasts approximately 60 seconds, making this one of the shortest Five Nights at Freddy's games purely based on hours alone. Now, in some
Really?
cases, if you look behind you, you'll notice an IV drip to the side of the bed, just hidden enough that you won't notice it until you look back at the footage you recorded. I'm very much projecting here. Anyways, this
Really showed
IV
up for a
drip is small
millisecond.
Easter egg that also hints at the story of FNAF 4, which we'll get back into in a moment. At the end of each night, after a cutscene where our boy gets jump scared yet again, we get a brand new game mode called Fun with Plush Trap. I think this game mode was added in purely because the game's mechanics are very frustrating and people would definitely want a way to skip through the night. This game mode places
Fun with
you
Plush
in a
Trap.
hallway and
I
turns
always
you into
guessed.
that large
I never
girl from
listened for
Squid
Plush
Games where
Trap.
You're playing red light, green light with a plushy version of Springtrap from the previous game. You have to listen really, really closely for Plush Trap's movements, as he will start moving towards you very slowly. When your light is on, however, he will stop moving, like red light, green light. Your task is to try and stop Plush Trap right on the cross on the floor. If you succeed, the game very generously gives you 2 hours off in the next night, starting you at 2 AM, making the nights much shorter. However, if you either run out of time,
And I forgot, how does that work? Like, if you start smack dab right in the middle of 2 AM, do you just have a chance for Bonnie to be at the first door you check? Like, you have to shut the door? Like, do you have a chance for Foxy to already be in the closet because you sacrificed 2
or
hours?
fail to stop Plush Trap on the cross,
Or
and
does it
let
act
him
like
get too
12 a.m.?
close, you lose the bonus for the rest of your session. I do appreciate something different from Scott to shake things up a little bit gameplay wise, but again, the problem of needing your headphones volume up at 300% only to get tinnitus is very relevant here, as the footsteps are very quiet compared to the shrieking from Plush Trap. As is custom for every FNAF game, the nights get progressively harder, but there's a huge twist in the 5th night of the game. All of the animatronics have disappeared! Well, I say disappeared. What actually happened is that they were all sent to the bench, and they were replaced with a bigger, badder animatronic that you have to ward off for the whole night, Nightmare Fredbear. So in Night 5,
one who
all
bit
your gameplay
you.
knowledge is thrown out the window and
my-
replaced with entirely new
What the
gameplay
heck?
mechanics that are designed to throw you off. Instead of going down one hallway and staying there, Fredbear got his running shoes on as he runs across the entirety of the house trying to get into your room. And you must have headphones on at this point.
Headphones are
as he
required
runs
for this
from the
night.
left to the right and back to the left in random intervals. Once he's ran to one end, you have to go
I swear I've never listened for Fredbear's footsteps ever. Never. I just kept spamming the doors, finding him, locking him out, because I don't think you have to listen to his breathing. Once you see him down the hall, you just shut the door and then he disappears. Then you just check the bed and the closet. Bro, I'm telling you, I found a way to efficiently be a pussy at Five Nights at Freddy's
go to that
when
door,
I was playing
but
it.
instead of closing the door immediately, you have to flash Fredbear once to make sure he's in that hallway.
Because Fredbear really loves to be flashed.
If you keep flashing him though, he will get closer and want a piece of you. Literally. In the case that you hear Fredbear have a little bit of a giggle, that means he's already in your room, and you'll either find him on your bed or in the closet.
I never knew the giggle meant he's in the room. See, that's how much of a pussy I am. I swear I would never know.
This night technically the easiest to pass out of all of them except the very first night, because instead of loads of animatronics giving you trouble, now you only have to listen for one. A speedy one, but one nonetheless. After you beat this night, you complete the game. Or do you? Going all the way back to the story of the game, and as I said before, you get bullied a lot by
good transition, love the edits.
Peers, until the end of night 5 signals your birthday party. Because your family are so supportive of you and want only the best for your well-being, you're sent on an amazing birthday trip to the pizzeria you're deathly afraid of. And what makes things even better is that your brother and his friends really want you to get up close and personal with the big animatronic that's entertaining everyone today.
What pranksters? Silly little fellows. Peculiar old chums.
So they carry you Spider-Man 2 style to the big golden animatronic in the room. Aren't they thoughtful? Then they jam you in his mouth. Obviously putting a child in the mouth of a big robot.
Why would they even do that? Like, why would those jackasses even think that's funny? Like, the jaw has to go down. That's what it's set to do. Why would they do that? Like, did they not, like, why did they not think? And then they just stood there like a bunch of idiots. Like, bro. 7. Like, but still, like, why would y'all think it's not gonna go down? Like,
this is what started it all and closed down the old location. Scott's a genius. How did he do this? A masterpiece in storytelling.
Oh no. Not the Skype call ringtone. They brought back so many flashbacks.
Yellow.
Red.
Green. Where are we going with this bit?
I don't know, you called me first.
Yeah, I've been told by an anonymous tip that you're not done.
Pardon?
It didn't happen in 1987.
How do you know this?
Go back a few nights.
Why?
The TV.
The editor fixing the lore for him.
Turn it on.
Alright, I'll switch it on, but I don't see how that's relevant.
1983.
Was that the bite of 87?
You're in it for the long run. Yep, you're in it for the long run.
Splendid.
Welcome to 6 more years of FNAF after this. Oh gosh.
After beating Night 5, you unlock a couple of bonuses in the menu, such as a star that shows up when you beat Night 5. This is the first of many. I'll get there in a bit. And, as is custom for every FNAF game again, a 6th night. Night 6 is basically Night 4 but on extreme steroids, as you have to manage all of the animatronics again. Then they'll tag in Nightmare Fredbear to catch you unawares and change the game mechanics at 4 AM. So you gotta be ready to shift fast. After beating Night 6 though, you're given a cutscene which shows that after his brother's heinous prank, our boy was in critical condition in the hospital, which is also a callback to the Easter egg that's
like, it's just a prank, bro. Like, that's crazy.
Each start to fade,
took it to a whole new meaning.
Only apologize for what happened. After everyone fades away, a random character will vow to put him back together, and what sounds like a heart monitor flatlines.
Change the world, my final message, goodbye.
Depressing note.
Where did that even come from?
But at least you gotta start from it. What? Night 7 is unlocked after beating Night 6, and it can be seen through the extra menu. Normally I don't talk about all the nights in this much detail, but FNAF 4 is actually one of the most detailed games in the franchise, as almost every single night and challenge is its own behemoth and has its own story within, with different game mechanics for each night. It seemed that Scott really wanted to end the franchise on a high note with how much content was crammed into this one game.
And it's crazy,
Night
I don't think
7
he's
is
ever
pretty
added an
much
extra
Night
menu
6
where you can see the
all over
creation of the
again, but instead of
animatronics.
Fredbear, this animatronic is just called Nightmare! And he's basically Fredbear, but with steroids and Adderall injected right into his left nostril. At 4 AM, the animatronics tag him in, and you have to be on your A game, as he's incredibly fast and
does that just say agame.com?
67 miles per second. Instead of grabbing you and screaming in your face, however, he decides that he's had enough frames for you today, as he just does this.
Crashed your game. I can't believe Scott didn't let Steel Wool make a game-crashing jump scare.
Then you can say you've at least made it through the main game, as you're given a 3rd star, but a quick cutscene before then shows an ominous box. You'd think that it's a gift from the developer for going through this much effort to beat the game, yes? Nope. It can't be opened, and you're just told that some things are best left forgotten, for now. But at least you can now say you've beaten the game, and you don't have to touch it anymore. Wait.
Halloween.
Extra nights too. I mean, these are self-explanatory, aren't they?
Oh,
All of
never
these
mind.
are made to ruin your experience and make the
Blind
game
mode.
disgustingly hard to play.
Has anybody ever
TV
beat this
Wonder
game
mode
on
puts you in
blind
pitch
mode?
black and somehow expects you to beat the game without knowing the status of Foxy, and this is where sound cues are extremely important, because you won't even know what time it is until you either get jump scared, which somehow repairs your vision, or you beat your night. Mad Freddy is not a sequel to Mad Father, sorry, but it makes Freddy behind you a lot more active. Insta Foxy does what it says on the tin. Foxy's instantly in your closet at the start of the night, and you have to ward him off from 12 AM. And All Nightmare is similar to Night 5 in the main game, where only Nightmare shows up and you have to ward him off for the entirety of the night. You can also
I don't think
mix
I've
and
ever
match
fought
these
against the
challenges to
Nightmare
make your
puppet.
life so much more difficult,
Now that I think
but
about
at the
it.
end of it all, you're awarded stars for each challenge. And somehow, I did all of it. Yeah, do not ask me how I managed to beat everything, but you can probably guess which
Wow.
game I enjoyed playing the most out of the original Five Nights at Freddy's games. These challenges were
8.6
added in a
hours.
Halloween patch of the game, released on October 30th, 2015. And in this Halloween edition, all of the animatronics were changed with the exception of the Freddy's, with Bonnie and Chica getting splashed with Whatsits, Foxy getting replaced with Mangle, Balloon Boy replacing Plush Trap, and instead of Nightmare, we have the puppet returning from FNAF 2 and 3, also known as Nightmarion. When Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was released, critics and audiences were divided over the game, me included. A lot of people pointed out to the increased tension of the nights as you're relying on sound cues instead of looking at the animatronics slowly arriving in your room via any of the cameras. Coupled with absolutely no dialogue in the game at all, which was a first for FNAF, this did make for a creepy game. The more emotional story surrounding a boy pretty much getting bullied and eventually murdered, yes, murdered, between the nights also tied everything together and served as a great finale to the entire Five Nights at Freddy's franchise.
Shadows.
All those stupid story beats that only served to add more confusion to the whole lore soured a lot of people from it. I remember a lot of content creators were extremely confused as the marketing made a lot of sense to loop things back to the bite of 87 in the original game. But it's at this point that it seemed that Scott couldn't let go of the entire franchise. I mean, each of the games brought something entirely new to the indie horror genre, and it wasn't long before people started to make clones of FNAF. The critical response to FNAF
yes,
4
the
made
fan
this
games.
the lowest rated FNAF game, even to this day, and you can kind of
Bro, I've never looked at the FNAF ratings. See, this is why I really like this video. It's like going into everything. It's showing me stuff that I didn't even like think about or like see.
see why. While the game certainly had a terrifying aesthetic, the over-reliance on sound cues just couldn't cut it for a lot of players. That being said, the franchise was at a high point. This was a great finale to a quadrilogy of games, and Scott commemorated it with a big render showcasing all of the animatronic designs he'd made from the first 4 games on his
And then they
website,
slowly
thanking
start to
all of
turn
his fans
cute.
and friends for catapulting Five Nights at Freddy's into the limelight, ensuring that the franchise and story ended on a high point, lauded as one of the most
they're
iconic
changing in the
horror
background.
franchises in gaming history.
Good at
Wait,
it.
what
Good
are you
at it.
doing? Why
Love to
is
see
everyone
that.
changing? Wait, stop it! Why is everyone turning into chibi? Stop!
Chapter 6, FNAF World. Man, we never got a FNAF World 2, dude. That's crazy.
After the release of FNAF 4, Scott decided that the best course of action for the franchise was to take a little bit of a break from the scares. After all, releasing that many games in such a short amount of time is bound to cause someone to get just a tiny bit burnt out from the
Oh my
franchise.
gosh.
So Scott decided to slow things down a little and work on a brand new game almost immediately after the release of Five Nights at Freddy's 4. The marketing of Five Nights at Freddy's in general also plays a big part to this game in particular, as the render he made thanking the fans for supporting Five Nights at Freddy's featured almost every single animatronic in the franchise. However, starting from September 2015, some of the animatronic designs started changing in what I'd like to call the Teen Titans Go syndrome.
Oh, God.
Probably should think of a better name than that. Each of the animatronics
Yeah.
started evolving into chibi versions of themselves one by one, with the render on the website updating almost every other day, and the thank you message slowly but surely being faded out to make way for the title of the game, which was revealed as FNAF World. However, fans looked at the promo material and were quick to claim a load of bollocks. FNAF World was initially released on Steam in 2016, and yes, I did say initially. This game is a complete and utter total shift from the previous games in the franchise, where the past 4 games had you as the protagonist defending yourselves against haunted animatronics, with the only gameplay being you moving your mouse around.
bro.
Scott decided to throw all of that right out the window
man got
again
the
and
tens
create an Excel
flicking.
spreadsheet game instead. Upon opening the game for the first time, he's actually serious about this one. FNAF World is essentially Scott Cawthon's
I want to hear the
Teen
title
Titans
music more.
Go, where you take a franchise not necessarily for kids and then run it through a saturation filter. Haven't we heard this one before? All of the animatronics that were bound to give you nightmares from the original games have all been replaced with cuter versions of themselves, except from Chica. Jesus Christ, why are her teeth like that? Who approved this?
Oh,
You will
nah.
then notice that the game's customization options
Not the
are quite
Diary of a
similar to
Whippy
Chipper
Kid
and
teeth.
Sons, and that you're given 3
What was his
slots,
name, Manny, I
and upon
think?
starting a new game, you're asked to erase data, even though you've never even played this game before. That's a bit ominous. Afterwards, you're plunged
Strange.
into the next screen where you're tasked with picking your starter Pokemon, and you're given a wide variety of animatronics you're eventually going to meet throughout the game, with 40 potential playable characters, unless you go for the fixed party option, which will lock you to the first 8 options. After choosing your starters, you're then given context to the story of FNAF World, and you can tell that Scott has learned his lesson from Chipper and Sons many years ago, as this time the characters are all animated in the cutscenes. So what's the story here? Wouldn't you like to know? Trouble seems to be brewing in animatronica. Scott seems to be really unsure about naming the world of FNAF because he even made a typo in the cutscene. This bodes well. There
Spelling
have been a lot
mistake.
of bizarre
Oops.
creatures roaming around lately. Even some that look like... Wait a second. That wasn't remotely worth it. After the opening exposition dump where you're tasked with
It's
going around to see
terrifying.
what the hell is even going on here, you're
Look
plunged
into
right
my
into
eye.
the game and... This
Yeah.
is what
I remember
you're
that.
greeted with. Hang on a second. I thought this was supposed to be 3D. Have I been Ubisofted again? I can't even move Diagon Alley. This tiny screen is essentially
even
what you're
move
going to
Diagon
be
Alley.
looking at for the entirety of the game, so have fun. The art direction that this specific part of the game seems to follow is the mini games that the franchise is all too known for, as you're given 4 options at the bottom of the UI to see your party members, save the game, and bite some crisps.
And maybe I'm just easily impressed, but like, I don't know. I don't have a problem with that UI. Like, I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to excuse anything, but I don't know. I don't know. I just like to look at the 8-bit UI of the game,
Anyway, let's
or
start
the
moving
8-bit
and...
design of the game.
So here's where most of the gameplay stems from. The battle.
But it's cool that he
At any
updated it.
point in the overworld section, you can get plunged into a wild Pokemon battle where you fight one of Scott's many monstrosities, such as Gear Rats, Bounce Pots, and Metal Men to name a few. Each of the animatronics have their own abilities within your party, and you have the option to switch between your assigned groups at any time in the battle. However, it's at this point where the game really shows its limitations. The combat is turn-based, and sometimes the game doesn't even know when it's your turn, as you could be waiting for what seems like ages before the UI shows up to choose an ability. Even
What the
after
heck?
choosing said ability, the
Never knew
enemies
that.
can still attack you, so you better hope the in-game user interface and RNG's on your side. The game also chooses the character to attack with as opposed to you having that option, which turns all the battles in the game to you just clicking whatever the game wants you to click on, while being overloaded by just how much stuff is happening on the screen, which gets a whole lot worse as the game continues, and you have more enemies to fight. Each animatronic has their own class, although the game doesn't really explain things. Some abilities affect every enemy, and others affect only one, and the only way in which to tell is by looking at the color codes that the game displays when it's your turn. After going through enough sensory overload that would give even the most seasoned Polybius enjoy an aneurysm, you just win. Or you can run away if the enemies are proving too much for you. If you end up defeating the monsters, you gain XP and fast tokens for your hard work. But where do you spend your hard-earned fast tokens? I'm glad you asked. Oh, that sounded really weird. Because scattered
Yeah.
around the overworld are random bots you can talk to named Mendos. Mendo runs a store called Mendo's Endo Upgrades, and you can use your fast tokens to buy upgrades to your endoskeleton to help you survive some of the harder boss battles in the games. And yes, there are boss battles. You can also use fast tokens at Lolbit's Bite Store. This is a store where you can essentially buy insects that will also attack your enemies consistently throughout any battle in the game.
Like the
Looking at
little Grim
prices for
Reaper.
some of the items on both stores, and you're already dreading having to play FNAF World for hours on end to get yourself some decent upgrades, aren't you? Well, worry no more, because right next to the stores, you also have Dee Dee. What are you doing outside Dexter's lab? Anyway, you can earn fast tokens by completing her minigame, which has you attempt to fish a pearl out from under the sea in under a minute. Unfortunately, you can't abuse this game mode, as upon completing the minigame, Dee Dee goes out of action for an undisclosed amount of time.
BRB.
However, there is another way to earn fast tokens, and it does require a little bit of hacking.
Is this thing on? Is it on?
What the
Are
hell?
we good? We're good.
So you want to get the best possible upgrades in the game, and you're too lazy to slog through several boring hours of Excel spreadsheets. Well, good thing I'm here.
because I can tell you exactly how to do
I'm really
it.
about to teach you how to.
If you're on the Windows machine, you're gonna want to go to your app
okay,
data folder.
he's
Then
really doing
locate
this.
MMF applications. This folder contains data for every single game you played developed using Click Team Fusion, which may include the original FNAF games as well. Locate
All right.
FNAF W. This is your data for
We're
FNAF
really
World.
learning
You'll
how to
notice
cheat in
that it's a
FNAF
generic
World.
file. Well, not to worry. Windows will ask you what you want to open the file with, and you need Notepad. When you open the file, you're gonna get a whole load of tech jargon. This is data that's read by FNAF World and converted to what you see in the game. You can then go and edit everything, from how many tokens you have to just how powerful your animatronics are. Make sure you save, reopen the game, and watch as this game becomes the most ridiculously easy RPG-like game you've ever played in your life, saving you hours and cementing yourself as the biggest god gamer on the planet.
the hell?
Also, make sure you reverse the changes afterwards.
It'd be so funny
You
if
wouldn't
Scott
wanna get
found
in too
some
much
way to
trouble now,
counter
would
the
you?
cheating.
And now we're back. When FNAF World was initially released, people really hated it. It was like the game took their families out back and gave them $2 million in Dogecoin, then shot them dead. Most of the reasons why people hated the game were mainly down to the extremely unfinished nature of it. When the trailer dropped, Scott specifically showed footage of the overworld, and it was in full screen and all in 3D. When the game was dropped on Steam, Scott seemingly threw all of that out of the window again and went beyond.
And then it makes me wonder, like, why though? Because like if you had the 3D and the and all that stuff, or maybe he did it for the trailer part.
Ubisofting the game, downgrading the visuals to the old-fashioned Atari style that he loved using in the previous FNAF games. If the game looked like this from the get-go, I think people would have been more welcome into FNAF World, but expectations were already at surface level, only for them to not be met. The battle system being awful didn't help matters either, with its buggy and unexplained nature really not improving people's opinion on the game. In general, this game seemed to be the victim of its own hype, leaving people to be incredibly disappointed as FNAF World was an unfinished product that people paid for. Some would say that this is incredibly foreshadowing to the future of the franchise, but again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. I've said this many times. At the poor reception of the game, Scott did something that most devs probably would never do and took the game down of his own volition. The game was removed from Steam after a small statement, and Scott allowed refunds of the game to anyone who bought it, which in my opinion is a really respectful thing to do as a dev. It takes a lot of balls to swallow your pride and admit that sometimes you have misses, which is more that can be said for a lot of devs I can mention. After taking the game down from Steam, Scott actually went back to the drawing board and returned a couple of months later with a brand new update to FNAF World, fittingly titled FNAF World Update 2, or Update 1.2 for being technical here. This game was Scott's Final Fantasy XIV moment, as it was a completely free overhaul of the entire game released on Game Jolt on May the 13th, 2016. This version of FNAF World basically took the original game and finished it, completely overhauling the majority of the game, from the visuals even down to the inclusion of mini games within the game itself. I don't want to dwell too much on the game because there really isn't much to write home about, seeing as this is a spin-off and all, but I felt it's important to talk about the development and the work done on this game, as I think this is a testament to just how much Scott cared about the franchise.
And it's crazy too that it's a spin-off game. He didn't even need to do that, you know? It was like, it was not something serious. It wasn't the next step forward for the FNAF series. I mean, at the time, you know, FNAF was technically over. But like, but yeah, it wasn't the next step forward. So he really could have just left it how it was and just took all that money, but he didn't. That's crazy.
At the first sign of negative
something he wasn't even taking seriously.
He's to refund people who paid for the game and push a free update to it instead.
I still have the game on Steam too.
That were there from the very start.
I didn't even refund it.
And that this game has is off the charts. He knows just how much of a meme his franchise is, and makes sure that the player knows it too. With spin-offs like Freddy in Space and Foxy Fighters making fun of the goofy nature of the game, coupled with references to Scott's pre-FNAF games such as The Desolate Hope and obviously Chipper and Sons. Literally everything got a facelift, with even more animatronics being added to the list of playable Pokemon, and the inclusion of voice acting. The voice acting in this game served as a neat addition to the tongue-in-cheek humor that Scott displayed throughout, especially in Foxy Fighters, where I'm pretty sure he knew that some people would get really annoyed with the vocal performances.
You won't get tired of my voice, will you? You won't get tired of my voice, will you? You won't get tired of my voice, will you? You won't get tired of my voice, will you? You won't get tired of my voice, will you? You won't get tired of my voice, will you?
In general, FNAF World serves as a decent spin-off to the franchise, albeit
man's a
with
troll.
a few flaws, and it's more of a testament to Scott wanting the best for FNAF fans. Normally this would be the end, right? 4 games and a spin-off. That's a lot for the franchise in a very short amount of time. Some would say that would be too many, but as you can see at the time code at the bottom of the screen, this video is nowhere near done. I am very sorry, future editing me. Anyways, during the development of Update 2, Scott was working on a continuation of the FNAF franchise, and this time he was going to go back to the horror roots that gave the franchise the reputation that it originally had. But first, I think it's time to do something I don't normally do on videos like these and talk about some of the FNAF-inspired fan games that were released in this time period. That's right,
let's see.
Methinks it's time for a
Lightning round.
But before we get into the lightning round, I've come to make an announcement. I'll keep it blunt, blunter than Emily. I've released some brand new merch that's officially available on THAF.store. I've enlisted the help of some really talented artists to help you bring you products such as a framed limited edition poster, a cool hack face mask.
Well, make sure you guys check out.
Because all the sponsors pulled out.
Make sure you guys check out the THAF shop.
Me, back to me, I guess.
If I didn't take that portion out, make sure you guys check out THAF's shop. Chapter 7, the fan games, out to Jock. You see
When
it.
something gains a massive amount of popularity, obviously there's going to be a lot of copycats that are either heavily inspired.
It's crazy too, and I'm pretty sure THAF will mention it. It's like all these fan games that came together and became famous alongside FNAF because of FNAF. Like Scott went and funded them too. That's crazy.
Or straight up plagiarized
expanded their universe. Like I've never seen a dev that's done that before.
And it's something that is especially apparent in the indie horror game community. When Five Nights at Freddy's gained mass appeal and recognition, obviously people are going to look at the franchise and salivate. The mechanics that game brought to the table had never been done before, so obviously people are going to pounce on the game like they've just discovered sliced bread. And pounce they did, with thousands of fan games being created based on the popular property, each with varying degrees of quality, starting with Five Nights at McDonald's released in... Wait,
Five Nights at McDonald's?
It's just a concept? Then why is it in the script? The FNAF phenomenon, Jesus Christ, try and say that quickly 4 times, became so unbearably large that websites such as Game Jolt had to make a dedicated category on their site just for games inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's.
That's awesome.
People creating fan games to this day. Many websites and publications have listed almost all the ones that they can find, with numbers reaching into the thousands. Most of the games on the list leading into dead links. But I'm mainly going to talk about the popular ones that really try to do their own thing among the many asset flips simply changing the PNG used to jump scare you, starting with Five Nights at Treasure Island was originally released sometime around 2014, and it's one of the first major fan games from the era. Created by An Art in 1996, this game was also inspired by the Abandoned by Disney creepypasta.
Everyone's getting their own...
Oh
wow, Epic Mickey, holy hell.
Considering there are several creepypastas.
But that's awesome that THAF is like giving the FNAF fan game creators a spotlight. That is awesome. Like there is no stone left unturned for the FNAF history in this video, and that is highly respectable.
There's an urban legends that exist on the internet about the mouse. The gameplay is similar to FNAF, obviously, but instead of a pizzeria, you're stuck in an abandoned Disney resort named Treasure Island. And your goal is to defend yourself from what at first seems to be rogue costumes of Mickey Mouse that wander around the attraction, most notably Photo-Negative Mickey, a variant of Mickey Mouse but with its scare factor cranked up to 10. Because his colors have been inverted! Similar to Springtrap, Photo-Negative Mickey is attracted by sound, so you're tasked with luring him away from your office by shutting off any camera, which would send Mickey there. Sounds easy enough, correct? Incorrect! Other characters can screw you over, like Disembodied, which is just a Donald Duck suit head with no brim. If he shows up in your room,
brim is crazy.
Only the loveliest music to your ears.
Thank you for that warning.
What you're supposed to do if this happens is shut off a camera that will cause him to disappear. The original version of the game, which was the demo released all the way back in 2014, was fairly janky, however, as you could just go AFK the entire time and still beat the night. But going AFK didn't always save you. Similar to games like SCP Containment Breach, if you wait in the menu for too long because you're either too scared to start or you're a YouTuber trying to introduce people to the latest game you're playing today, the menu would do this as a reference to the Abandoned by Disney creepypasta.
What the hell?
Wanna see my foot come off? The game had numerous bugs and
Nah,
wasn't exactly
I would be
super
mad
polished,
as hell.
But over the years, several improvements to the game were made, culminating in a remake/reboot of the game released in 2020 by
That's a cool
Radiant's
logo.
team. This version of the game fleshed literally everything out from the original and included some incredibly polished graphics and improved models from the original game, with more characters created just for the game.
I'm glad I'm learning
areas such as
FNAF
the pirate
fan game
caverns
history.
getting facelifts from the original game. The
RTX
story
on.
also got elaborated on and had you play as Jake Smith, an intern working at the Supernatural Studies Association, getting sent over to Treasure Island to conduct some research. The 2020 version of the game is the definitive way to play Five Nights at Treasure Island, and the devs even added special modes into the game such as Classic Mode, a one-to-one remake of the original 2014 game for nostalgia's sake. The
Headless
success
Goofy.
of this FNAF/Creepypasta hybrid fan game also caused a surge in fan game crossovers, including Five Nights at the Krusty Krab was released on January 29, 2015.
Five Nights at the Krusty Krab.
Hey, that's my birthday. Developed by Dakota Wood, it places you in a brand new Krusty Krab that's open in Bikini
I need to play
Bottom.
these
But
OGs,
this time,
man.
Mr. Krab
Cause like I remember playing Those Nights at Rachel's. I don't. Is that what? I'm doing a quick Google search. I don't want to butcher the name. Isn't it? Yeah, it's called Those Nights at Rachel's. Wow, I really took it seriously when I said quick Google search. I remember I had a crappy PC, but I never got to like play it on a good PC so I can see what it's like. Maybe I might go back on a video and do that right.
Krabs wants to keep as much money as possible, as all the staff
Just
in the
jogged
brand
my
new
memory
Krusty
of those
Krab
old
are
days.
animatronic versions of the old employees.
I've seen that
Mr.
before.
Krabs brought in to prevent paying salaries to his old employees. This game was made in the Unreal Engine, and you could really tell upon opening the game because you're greeted with the most generic UE4 menu, as well as the sheer amount of post-processing done around the place. It's like
And the
watching an old
crashing.
Corridor
Unreal
digital
Engines
video.
really crash a
The gameplay
lot.
itself is pretty much the same as FNAF in that you're rooted entirely to the spot and you have to look
But
through cameras to
But that's also why I think my PC, or my old PC, used to lag. It could not run Unreal Engine games. I think it's because they were so like high-end
find
made.
each of the animatronics before they get into your office. But this game has one or two twists.
Oh God,
up
is that
its sleeve
Squidward?
To prevent itself from being one big Unreal package of copyright infringement. In one of the cameras is a fuse room, and you're supposed to stop animatronics from entering that room too, as the lights may start flickering in your office and it could give them an in. All things said,
Ugh,
the game
the
was
Squidward
your generic
face.
FNAF fan game fare, until the developer made a sequel several months later titled Five Nights at the Chum Bucket. This game seriously ups the ante from the first
Five
game,
Nights
and
at the
judging by
Chum
the menu
Bucket?
music,
Oh God.
it seems we're heading to SpongeBob's funeral. This game provides more context to the story. In short, you've been kidnapped after the Krusty Krab burnt down, and now you're trapped in
Oh,
the
no.
Chum Bucket, a much more elaborate
Not the
location
Chum
than the
Bucket.
Krusty Krab. And the guy on the phone wants to cover up the events of the first game by killing you in this one. But this time, your eyes have been sprinkled with several filters, as this game really pushes the post-processing on Unreal to maximum overdrive absolutely everywhere, which leads into one of my horror pet peeves, or HPP for short. It's something entirely irrational, but I've never liked it when first-person games, especially horror games, have random filters dropped on them as if the eyes are camera lenses. I mean, technically eyes are lenses in and of itself, but things like dust and lens flares and grain and sometimes even UI elements show up in some found footage games with no proper detail.
I can see how this would annoy Thaf though, because like, yeah, when I'm looking at the light in front of me, I don't, you know, I don't see all that stuff. I don't see that like I'm a camera or something, you know.
And grain and sometimes
Like,
even
geez.
UI elements show up in some found footage games. with
Like, bro
no
needs to
proper
clean his
detail as
eyes
to the
off.
fact that the character's supposed to be carrying a camera. It happens in a few games and it does take me right out, but that's only a small pet peeve. Five Nights at the Chum Bucket is an improvement in almost every way to the original game, even down to the animatronic designs in this one, with SpongeBob looking like a complete Leopard 2A7 and Squidward looking like
Bones?
that. In the room
Skeleton
itself,
now.
it makes use of an overdrive button that allows you to use more items in one go. As if you have both the doors shut, you're unable to use the cameras or the flashlight. The overdrive button
wow.
mitigates this, but it runs on a cooldown when it's used.
Also, the phone on the desk shows a list of the developer's supporters and even lists you at the end. That's adorable.
The important
Oh,
thing about
that's
this game
very
is
nice.
that this took Scott's
Did that say
original-
poised?
But it runs on a cooldown when it's used.
Also,
I think
the
I've seen
phone-
it. Yeah, poise. Oh Oh yeah, I see some YouTubers on there.
That shows a list of the developer supporters and even lists you at the end.
That's neat.
adorable.
The important thing about this
I think I see
game
Risk
is
Rim,
that
too.
this took Scott's original concept and showed that it could work in a fully rendered 3D environment. And this is especially important for future games, especially one that would take animatronics and put them in a fully free roam environment for you to run up against. And that's the
Joy of creation. Oh no.
Was released on August 3rd, 2016.
No
and takes
shade
things in a
against the dev,
completely
but
different
Case was-
direction. Yes, we are doing
Case
a
was-
time skip
Case
here.
was a
This
weird
game
game.
was essentially the developers' attempt to mix Outlast
Hey,
with
I
Five
remember
Nights at
being
Freddy's,
very
and the
hard.
results- A game. Definitely a game. Now, technically speaking, this isn't really a fan game, as the devs are very quick to correct people. It's loosely inspired by the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise.
Loosely?
And this game is different to the fan games we've covered in the lightning round thus far, as this one costs money. Even though it isn't
Money.
much, this game actually costs more than the Five Nights at Freddy's games. So you'd think for
Wow.
approximately $10, you'd get yourself an extremely polished game out of it. Let's just get into the game. This game contains strong images and scenes of violence. How can an image be strong? Is it possible to learn this power? You use this pile of junk! Not appropriate for people with heart diseases and pregnant women. That's really specific. Well, at least the devs are
Did you
looking
add-
out for all the pregnant women.
Did
playing
FAF add that,
animatronics.
or-
So in the game, you're playing as John Bishop, a police officer working for the Aurora Police Department. And let me just say,
Okay,
the voice
never
acting
mind.
in this game is definitely something else.
Looks like I fell asleep. It's almost midnight.
Oh, the
What
voice
is it?
acting!
Strange. No one else should be here.
The original sin that man is responsible to. To protect the life cycle.
I have no idea what sort of direction the voice actors were given, but it certainly wasn't forward.
I should
Happened with
remember
the
this, but I
lights?
don't.
Is this some kind of deja vu?
When you
Deja
actually
vu?
start playing the game, you're given a tablet that serves as the FNAF half of the gameplay, where you use the tablet to look around the CCTV of the building to scout for any animatronics that are nearby. And after finding one with a code to unlock a door, you can go to that door and...
What the fuck?
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the animatronics themselves, shall we? This
That wasn't
game's
an edit?
firmly
That was in the
a time
game? I don't remember
as
getting
instead of
that.
the uncanny value of any of the animatronics so far in this video entirely,
What the
this
hell?
game takes the edginess and cranks it up to 300, as all of them are the edgiest things you'll ever see. The red eyes, the colorful language tatted onto the metal, the blood. They're not animatronics, they're just... evil robots. Funnily enough, there used to be a bear animatronic as part of the roster, but that ended up being removed because Scott himself struck them down with the full might of the DMCA. So he was replaced with a wolf. The rest of the game
Wait,
is
dead
a still
ass?
full might of part of the roster, but that ended up being removed because Scott himself struck them down with the full might of the DMCA.
I didn't
So
even
he
know
was replaced
that.
with a wolf. The rest of the game is a slog to get through, as all you're tasked with doing is going from point A to point B
Wow.
and collecting random notes and items that would advance the story and help you escape the police department that the guy on the phone has trapped you in for revenge. The game tries to get you to rely on stealth, but said stealth doesn't work most of the time when animatronics will just teleport around the place or glitch in and out of their own rectums. What? So,
Yeah, this game was very
the game
annoying.
also
I'm
chastises
starting to
you
get
for
the
dying,
memories
as when you
back.
get caught and vored by the animatronics, not only are your ears left bleeding, but the game tells you to try and hide better. And because of that,
Trying to
I am
hide
done
better.
with this garbage. But if you want to watch my struggles, a link will show up in the description and around here. So let's go to the other free roam game that actually is a FNAF fan game. The Joy of Creation was initially released on November 30th, 2015, but that game was cancelled by the developer mid-development to make way for The Joy of Creation Reborn in 2016. The initial version was similar in gameplay to another horror game named Boogeyman, in which you're supposed to
Oh my
shine a
God,
flashlight in several
Boogeyman?
locations to prevent yourself
Yo,
from getting
Flash
caught
from
by
the
the
past.
monsters in your own home. The game was fairly derivative, so the developer decided to take everything free roam.
I think Boogeyman was another game that I couldn't play because my old PC, or like my PC before my other PC was trash.
Jock R is FNAF and Slender mixed together.
I wonder if I should get
make a
back to
game in
it.
which you're tasked with collecting items in a set time period. I don't know why you need to collect things as random as a cap and wheels, but gameplay is gameplay at the end of the day. When the game was initially made, it didn't even have the option to look for items in a set time. All you were tasked with doing was evading the animatronics for as long as you could. And let me just say, the renditions of the original animatronics in these fan games are, in my opinion, some of the scariest. Each of the animatronics in Reborn are ignited versions of the originals, and the developer did a good job in in actually making them threatening and scary. Because as you'll find out later in the video, the animatronic designs go a long way with regards to making a game scary. This has also helped with the sound design and joy of creation. The animatronics are big mechanical
things
with lots of wires and machinery from within, and it seems like a lot of fan games and regular games seem to forego this fact. The animatronics in the joy of creation really sound like they're broken versions of the originals, as the overbearingly loud footsteps and the mechanical whirring, especially on Freddy, really heighten the tension in THAFNINE. It really seems like these
Forgot how fast they were.
big, and there's a reason to be afraid of them. I know earlier I mentioned that there's such a thing as trying too hard to make the design scary, especially during the production of FNAF 4, but I think the joy of creation does a good job in mixing the uncanny valley with actually creepy designs. Back to the game itself, and THAFNINE plays similar to your typical Slender fare like I said before, but this time you're stuck in a house in Houston, Texas, and the animatronics are let loose in different areas of the house. I mean, at this point it's not even a house, it's a mansion. Even for American standards, the rent on this must be ridiculous. What job do we have that pays for a house this big? On the menu, you have each of the animatronics waiting politely outside the door in the rain for you to let them in. And on each mode,
man, all my laggy computer moments, I'm starting to get flashbacks.
If you don't collect them in a set amount of
time, probably run like butter now. Well, not probably, it will on my PC.
Or sending you back to the menu, you just get put on free roam and you're free to walk around the house until an animatronic comes to vibe check you.
Then you get punched in the face. Oh, okay, Freddy doesn't punch you in your face, he just eats it. Okay. Video? Where'd you go?
Oh, I'm starting over. Yeah, in a weird design choice, each time you die, you instantly
there's
spawn back to the start of the level, regardless of if you've completed it or not. And you have to loop the entire level again until you get killed, which would be a huge issue depending on the animatronics mechanics. Foxy and Chica both have unique mechanics in that Foxy will trail you until he makes a sound and his eyes light up. Once that happens, you only have a few seconds reaction time to look behind you with your flashlight and stun him. However, if you look at him for too long with the flashlight, he'll get aggressive and instantly kill you. Now bear in mind that
that's crazy.
You die, both you and Foxy spawn in the same place at the same time in the same attic, and you will find that death will become extremely common as you play. Same with Ignited Chica. Her level is a blatant ripoff of Slender, as she's in a forest and will constantly trail you, but looking at her for too long will cause her to get aggressive and instantly peck you to death. This game also has HPPs, as it's made on the Unreal Engine and does the typical post-processing bloom and grain effects to add to the dark and gritty nature of the game. But materials and eyes don't work like that! Now, THAFNINE didn't have much story to it, with nothing really bridging each night. That is, until 2017, when Nixon released the Joy of Creation story mode. This is probably the fan game I'm going to spend the longest talking about, because I feel like this one also provided a major blueprint for some of the future mainline games moving forward. Story mode basically combined all the gameplay features of the original game and Reborn, and mashed them all together under one long narrative. Set in an alternate reality,
I still gotta play all these.
Of the first FNAF game,
like I know about them, but I've never like actually touched them. That's crazy. Or I couldn't because my PC was garbage.
The game likes to go by. Before you actually load into the main menu, you get some story context. The narrator of the story is Nick, Scott's son, and he's trying to remember all the events that occurred several years prior that ruined his life. And it's at this point that I should probably mention that the voice acting in this game, in a single word, not good.
This is the story of the night I lost my home.
Okay.
My childhood.
Okay.
And almost my family.
Wow.
When Five Nights at Freddy's just ended.
I'm not going to knock the voice actors because I'm sure they did try, and they are nowhere near as bad as in case animatronics. But this game does suffer from some of the corniest writing in a horror game. And corny is good sometimes, but the way this game goes about its story sounds like the writers wrote it while listening to Evanescence on repeat the entire time. Anyways, the story instantly takes a turn for the stupid when Scott finds a guy called Michael suddenly in his house and lets him stay. No, Nick convinces Scott to let a complete stranger stay in their household? If I saw a complete stranger end up in my house with no explanation, the game would have ended 5 seconds in. After that setup, you're then free to play through each of the memories in the game. The first level's the bedroom, and you play as Nick as a baby, and you're tasked with fending off 4 animatronics that show up around your room for 6 whole hours. Please remember that you are a literal zygote, and you have to listen to Michael on the phone, who will tell you how to evade each of the animatronics in question. You sick man, you Nixon! Credit where credit is due. One thing that this game does extremely
Does Bonnie punch a baby?
FNAF gameplay that we're all really familiar with, with the free roaming aspect of THAFNINE. This keeps the game incredibly fresh, as each memory has completely different game mechanics that would keep you on your feet so you don't get used to the way the game works, like the mainline FNAF games. In the bedroom, you're rooted to the spot in your bed, and being the athletic baby that we are, we have to move around the crib, closing the curtains if you see Freddy through the window, turning on the lights to check in on your sanity, and pretending to fall asleep if Bonnie or Chica get into the room.
Yeah, you better pretend to fall asleep if Bonnie gets in there, or punch you in your throat.
This time you have to rely on the television screen to pause Freddy and Foxy, but you can only pause one at a time. The technology in the Cawthon household is out of
get
this
punched in my
world,
throat.
because this television has constant live footage from Freddy and Foxy, and you're supposed to hide when one of them enters. It becomes a game of timing their arrival, because as the night progresses, they get faster and can catch you off guard if you don't time things right.
Not the first-person
Bonnie
view of their
can't be stopped,
eyes.
however, and you have to listen to his moans from outside.
What the heck?
Wait, that came out wrong.
If Bonnie opens the main door and sees you, he will vibe check you with what is, in my opinion, the greatest jump scare in any FNAF game, fan game or not.
Yeah, you get punched in your... Yeah, you just get punched right in your face. Like, play the game better, skill issue.
Like, he completely totals you. He's absolutely a certified woman beater. He threw that punch like he shagged his best mate. The next memory, The Office, puts you in Scott's gamer setup, and you have to survive the night while all the animatronics are desperately trying to get in and attack you. Also, I always found the cutscene before this level hilarious because the camera is all shaky, and then you're given 3 monitors to look outside and look for Foxy, where he'll get angry at you for staring at him. If Freddy is there though, you're supposed to go to that specific area and flash him.
Because Freddy really
Oh my gosh.
Sometimes Chica will try and wriggle through the wall and cupcakes will spawn, forcing you to have to look
Cupcakes
everywhere
will
for
spawn.
about 3 or 4 cupcakes before she despawns. A lot of you watching this part of the video are probably extremely confused as to why I'm talking about this game in so much detail. And the simple answer is that the mechanics in this game serve as huge foreshadowing to the future of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, especially in the move to a more free-roaming gameplay loop. And it's the next section of story mode where you'll see this a lot as endoskeletons are brought into the plot. That rhyme was planned. The basement memory is arguably one of the creepiest sections of any FNAF related game, and in this level you play as Michael. From a pure gameplay standpoint, the scare factor of the endoskeletons are heightened by the fact that you can't get near to them, and you must look at them at all times, because looking away will cause them to move. It's such a simple design choice that heightens the tension, because there's some moments in the game where you're going to have to look away to do things like unlock doors or inspect walls. And the sound designs that come with the endoskeletons are top tier, coupled with the fact that you see them move at inhuman speeds, and sometimes just hearing them is enough to increase the tension. This game does fall victim to the rage game syndrome, especially in this section, as the lack of tutorials really make you bait to some obnoxious jump scares. I should probably mention now that most, if not all, of the fan games in this section of the video were played on stream, and you can watch either uncut footage of them on my VODs channel or on my second channel around here. The Joy of Creation story mode ends at the attic, and this level is the closest to the original FNAF in terms of gameplay, as you have to keep tabs on a large animatronic simply named Creation, who will slowly make his way up to you, and you have to fend him off by flashing him. And there are endoskeletons and even Golden Freddy himself roaming around the cameras. The story itself does get a little bit confusing, and it's definitely hard to take the dark and gritty tone of the game seriously, especially with regards to the voice acting and some of the writing. But I do appreciate that this game was really consistent with the withered imagery that came with these specific renditions of the popular animatronics. I really didn't want to go into so much detail about the game mechanics and plot, but I think the Joy of Creation story mode is arguably one of the most well-rounded fan games to come from this era, and it proved to be influential as well, as the game's high view count on GameJolt, coupled with
11.4 million. Wow, I think that's the biggest one I've seen before.
Fan game on a huge pedestal over the
No,
others.
it definitely is.
But I've been talking about this specific game for way too long, so let's get back to the lightning round.
Lightning round.
Five Nights at Candy's was released in 2015
Yeah, FNAF.
and is the first of multiple games in its franchise. Developed by Emil Mako, Candy's uses almost exactly the same gameplay beats as the original FNAF games, but this time you're in a new restaurant called Candy's Burgers and Fries. What makes this game unique from the others is that this game treats the original Scott Cawthon games as canon, instead of simply just copying the homework and making 100% sure not to make it look obvious. Candy's uses the official story to influence its gameplay. Gameplay similar to the Five Nights at Freddy's games, but with two key differences. One, there are no lights whatsoever because the FFCMO has also infected this game with a vengeance. So to assist you throughout the game, all the cameras have night vision so you can actually see the animatronics in question. And two, there is another door right in the middle of the office that can be closed to prevent other animatronics from entering the room. Similar to the first FNAF game, using any of the doors can overcharge the battery for the entire building. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous at this point. Surely
He just picked up his whole keyboard and snapped that.
Why does closing a door have to be mechanical? Just use a regular door at this point. Similarly, using night vision takes
You use a regular
power.
door when they
So the game
beat it
makes things
down?
fair by having the animatronics' eyes glow in the dark in any room that
Might as
they're
well
in,
use a
with
blast
the exception
shield.
of this demonic entity named who has no eyes, forcing you to use night vision. And if any of the animatronics are at the door, you won't get any warning other than two white dots in the darkness, which you might dismiss as your graphics card acting weird.
I must be using my marbles.
Oh. The game ended up getting a facelift with Five Nights at Candy's Remastered, which improved the visuals, gave more accessibility options.
I played this one for the channel, right?
And fleshed the story out a bit by changing
Yeah, I
the
did.
script of each of the phone calls.
I
to make
definitely remember
things a
doing
little
it.
more concise. This game also spawned a mini franchise as it got sequels developed fairly quickly. Five Nights at Candy's 2 took the game mechanics of FNAF 2 and FNAF 3.
I definitely
and
remember
mixed them
playing FNAF
together.
2 when it
In that
dropped.
game, you play as Marilyn Schmitz. Hang on a second, that's the same surname as the geezer from the first FNAF game. Are they related? The game takes place in a factory containing broken versions of the animatronics from the first game, and you think to yourself,
Why in the hell would I even consider for a second to spend one night there, let alone 5?
Don't
and
know.
the answer is simple. Lose a bet! And that's how you end up in the factory. The game mechanics in this one are pretty straightforward for the most part. The animatronics will
I would
wander
never
to
do
your
this.
location, but you can ward them off by prank calling phones in a room that's far away from you. Similar to using audio cues to lure Springtrap away in the third FNAF game. Obviously, the animatronics will get angry at the tomfoolery you're committing and destroy the phones temporarily. But you can enter a gameplay loop where you just lead them between both rooms and play ping pong with calling the animatronics to the room and back again. It makes the game so gosh darn easy. I never understood what the complaining was about. If the animatronics do eventually find you, all you're tasked with doing is flashing them in the hallway and prank calling them elsewhere so they leave. All in all, this is where the franchise was starting to really find itself and establish its own identity. So Five Nights at Candy's 3 took all of these
What the
mechanics
heck?
and threw them out the window. FNAF 3 is an entirely different
Oh,
experience
man,
to the
FNAF
other
3,
games in
I
the
re-
series, channeling their
the
inner
memories.
FNAF 4 and really putting the all-important lore to the test. This game serves as a prequel to the first two games and has you play as Marilyn again, but younger. And now she has to defend herself from what's been dubbed Monster Rat and Monster Cat. No idea how a record label can be so scary. Using
Oh
your
my
flashlight,
God.
you have to fend the animatronics off and shine in their eyes to cause them to leave
Better
the
get that
room.
tracking
And
down.
sometimes you're tasked with looking under your bed to lure them away with your tape recorder. In between each night are a ton of mini games and cutscenes.
Get the aim
set in
training with
dreamscape
FNAF,
environments, and
3.
Like FNAF 3, they advance the story and provide more context as to why Marilyn is so attached to the animatronics in the Candy's franchise. I kinda skimmed through all of the games, but with a fourth game on the way, Five Nights at Candy stands on its own as a fan-made spin-off to the main Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, as it took what was essentially almost a carbon copy of the original games and shuffled the mechanics around to give 3 highly enjoyable and creepy games in their own right. So that was enjoyable, right? Covered 3 whole games in a short amount of time. See, I told you, lightning round. Remember how I mentioned a few moments ago about the prospect of staying in a factory for one night on your own? Well, for those of you guys who like those staying overnight in a restaurant challenges, boy, do I have a game for you. One Night at Flumpty's was released in 2015, and this game
One
does
Night at
something entirely
Flumpty's.
different to any of the fan games shown thus far, which has embraced
Another
the Adobe
classic.
Flash aesthetic. All of the assets
Adobe
in the game are
Flash.
hand-drawn, and they mesh together to make a consistently bleak environment that you'll be staying in. This game takes the mechanics of FNAF and condenses them into only one night, and you'd assume since it's one night, the game would be ridiculously easy since the first night is never usually that
No,
bad in any of the games.
ridiculously hard.
But the game does have a few tricks up its sleeve to prevent the nights from becoming complete snooze fests. Firstly, the game has progressive difficulty. The longer into the night you survive, the harder it will get. There's also absolutely no phone guy in this game either, so you're tasked with finding out how each of the mechanics work yourself, which will make the first few playthroughs of this game absolute agony trying to figure out how each of the many characters in this game work. And lastly, the main antagonist of the game, Flumpty himself, seems to be self-aware as he's immune to the plot and can transcend time and space, because that's totally fair. This also plays into the plot of the game, in which instead of being a complete weapon and going to a place like this of your own volition, Flumpty simply kidnapped you and forced you on a night of perilous clicking with all of his friends. Apart from that though,
My
The
God,
game
I just
plays
seen the
almost
Winnie the
exactly
Pooh
the same as FNAF,
plushie.
so there's not much to write home about. The game ended up getting 2 sequels, the first and more popular one being One Night at Flumpty's 2, which was the game to make this game stand out from the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, as this time you have multiple different characters to keep tabs on and a brand new exposure meter. To ward away the characters that move around the complex, you're tasked with turning the lights off to stop them from seeing you in the office, which is filled with lovely visuals such as a Freddy nose you can honk, a bunch of toy blocks spelling out Eid, and a flayed case of copyright infringement that stares at you sometimes when you put down your monitor. Turning off the lights doesn't sort out all the issues, as you have to watch out for an owl that can travel through the vents and can still get to you even if the lights are off. So make sure you've closed the right vent or else you're in trouble. Hilariously though, because of the game's mechanics, it becomes borderline unplayable at higher refresh rates, as the animation doesn't even have time to register before you get jump scared. Upon completing the night, you also get a chance to try out a brand new hard-boiled mode, in which the character's difficulties are cranked up to 392,917%, and you need to have your own reflexes on check or else they'll tear your face off. How pleasant. One Night at Flumpty's 2 is genuinely one of the most well-rounded and arguably scariest fan games that spawned from FNAF, as it managed to successfully translate most of the mechanics into a polished 2D environment, complete with detailed and well-drawn animations for almost every character in the game. It's just a damn shame that the games were developed by a piece of shit. So I've talked about some somewhat original FNAF fan games, right? Well, obviously, as is custom for any game that gets extremely popular, it's going to get some cheaper knockoffs with popular brands, such as Five Nights at Chuck E. Cheese's was also one of the first fan
Chuck E.
games
Cheese.
created, being released around February 2015.
That's just a copyright thing waiting to happen.
Would be incredibly easy to make, as the entire concept of Five Nights at Freddy's
www.bandcamp.com up there.
The mascots and the animatronics at the CEC, and the game was indeed pretty easy to make. But it looked terrible. So in 2021, Radiant's team, the same developer behind the reboot of Treasure Island, worked on a remake of the game, which took the uncanny valley of the mascots and turned it into an uncanny continent. Jesus Christ, why is the office so terrifying? Five Nights at Thomas's puts you in charge of managing Thomas the Tank Engine. I literally don't even know what you're supposed to do other than shove coal inside the furnace, because every time I play the game for literal seconds, I get greeted with... But the developers have made expansions and sequels to the game that have improved upon the mechanics and made them a little more easier to manage. Five Nights in anime. Okay,
oh no, no.
In what world would there be fully functional animatronics in an anime convention? In what practical way would you want to have robots instead of staff members?
What the hell?
Hey! Oh, shit.
You're not supposed to be here. This place is officially outbound. Did you read the sign?
Don't go in the ball pit.
I'm gonna have to ask you.
Okay, I get your point. The gameplay is similar to your typical FNAF game, but instead of scary animatronics,
Good God, I don't know if I can show you this.
I do find it funny that they don't
that
even
game was
sound like
weird.
robots, and it doesn't even sound like the night guards having a bad time. Obviously, because of the subject matter, this became prone to a lot of clones being made even to this day. And most of the time, it's not even worth playing the games properly, as people are only really in it for the jump scares. That being said, there are at least some versions of the game that at least don't go into Kuma territory, like a 2019 remake of the game that is literally just the original FNAF game, but more polished and with the model switched out. Is that the Fortnite fonts? That concludes the fan game section of the video. Admittedly, there's so many fan games and
the silence is crazy.
Ages, but I think I'm pretty satisfied with the output.
The heck? What's this?
Oh, this guy, right? He's claimed to have combed through so
Isn't that
many
Go Motion?
stupid little fan games, yet managed to forget basically one of the most influential of them all. Like, give me a second, I'm gonna heave. Listen, man, let me handle this for you, yeah?
Wait, hang on. How did you get here? You should not be here right now.
You left your Premiere project open, stupid. I thought I'd edit over it a bit, lol.
How did you get access to my Adobe account?
Chill, dog, relax. I'm not gonna do anything. I just wanted to show you the game you missed. The people in the comments will probably get super pissed over if you don't show it.
Okay.
Which one?
Well, you've got 25 seconds. What's the game anyway?
Five Nights at Boys.
Oh yeah.
Oh
I did forget
yeah.
About that one. Wait, hang
So
on!
anyway, this thing's
It's
an
definitely
RPG
OG.
game dropped hot off the release of the first couple FNAF games that I'd talk about for longer if YouTube's monetization rules weren't so...
No. We cannot do this. We have to pull the plug. So there you have it. A multitude of fan games with varying degrees of quality that all spawned from what was just 4 mainline Five Nights at Freddy's games at the time. It is an understatement to just how much mileage people got from these game mechanics, as to this day, there are thousands of fan games to cover, and if I covered them all, this video would be another 3 hours longer than it's supposed to be. The fan game wave became so popular that Scott himself decided that he wanted to assist the people
There it
that
is,
ripped off
fan
his
versus
game mechanics the
initiative.
best. But that's also something I'm going to talk about later in the video. That's a lot of payoffs I'm gonna have to deliver, my god. If you want to see my experiences playing through these fan games, I'm going to continue plugging my second channel, link in the description. But now it's time to go back to the main franchise in question, as after this wave of fan games, Scott decided to return to making Five Nights at Freddy's games, and the next game in the series turned out to be a game changer for the franchise, for better and for worse.
Go. Sister location. I'm just glad Five Nights at Anime is off the screen. My god, why was that game ever conceived?
On October 7th, 2016, and this marked a significant franchise shift for Scott and his band, as this is where FNAF started to move more into the science fiction genre than straight up horror. Yes, you can argue that the shift to science fiction started with the third game, but I think this game is a more significant push in that direction. And that
I just
can be
realized that
immediately
Pfizer
seen in
joke
the
on the
menu
screen.
of the game. The animatronic designs and sister locations seem a lot more technically advanced than any of the games prior, implying a time skip of some sort from the previous games to this one. It's kind of clear from the start that Scott wanted this game to be almost entirely different from the original quadrilogy, where aside from a few mechanical differences and gimmicks, the games all revolved around preventing the animatronics from getting to your comfort zone and committing acts that are not good. All in all, this game marked a brand new era for FNAF in a brand new location. But did this game successfully push the franchise in this new direction? I guess we'll find out. Upon opening the game for the very first time, you immediately get launched into a cutscene where it looks like an interview is taking place about an animatronic on screen which is known simply as Circus Baby.
With all due respect, Mr. Afton, those are not the design choices we are talking about.
In the franchise, as from this game onward, voice acting becomes extremely important in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise moving forward. In the older games, all the voice work was relegated to just the phone calls at the beginning of each night. And the fourth game didn't even have any voice acting. FNAF World was probably the litmus test to see whether people would like voice acting moving forward in the FNAF franchise, and the decision seems to have been made, the results of which will be debatable moving forward. Most importantly though, the game marks yet another turn in the FNAF franchise by putting the plot front and center. The previous games weren't really upfront about the plot, at least the first two games certainly weren't, requiring you to have some NCIS, ISCSI, ISCSI.
It's a lot of S's.
Knowledge to zoom in and enhance details in the environment that give you clues as to what the story is about. But with the introduction of voice-acted cutscenes, even with the limited animation, Sister Location is the game that Scott finally decided to make the lore of the franchise make even remotely sense. As judging from the revelations in FNAF 4, things are getting confusing. So back to the cutscene, and after describing Circus Baby's features, the interviewer mentions that those weren't the features he was referring to, calling the interviewee by their name.
Those aren't the design choices we were
Mr.
curious
Afton.
about, Mr. Afton.
The piano
Judging by
image.
the conversation that was just had, he's the creator of the animatronics in this game, and clearly
I seen a picture or like a little image of confusion on the screen. I think, yeah, if you didn't read the books at this point, wait, did the first book come out before Sister Location? Because I think Afton was first heard in the books, right? So anybody would be confused hearing Afton for the first time, like, who the hell is that?
he must be a villain, since he sports a British accent, and everyone knows that British people are all inherently evil. Most people playing through this game would have no idea who this Afton fellow is, and this is where the Corpse Party syndrome kicks in, as you're now expected to look into things outside of the games to be clued in on whatever the lore's supposed to be. So let me take you back a little bit. Before the release of Sister Location, I've already mentioned how
is that
big the
fucking
FNAF franchise
Risk
is,
of
with
Rain?
games, fan
Hang
games,
on.
music, parodies.
Was that fucking Risk of Rain with Five Nights at Freddy's and Goku Black on the side? Did I just what was that? How do you do that?
Potatoes, tomatoes.
Lamb.
and books. If there was one thing that quite a lot of people were invested in, it was the lore. And you can clearly see that many were trying to piece together the puzzle, with creators like Metric Patrick making videos theorizing where the lore is going. And to be honest, really wasn't going anywhere. Scott was obviously making things up as he went along, as things were retconned or changed to completely shut down some of the fan speculation. I can imagine him in his office just going, let me make the stupidest, most convoluted story ever and see how hard these kids try to defend it. And so,
probably exactly what he said, honestly.
FNAF World and Sister Location, he worked on a book adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's
honestly,
titled The Silver Eyes.
There's probably no lore. He's just trolling us. This is the biggest troll of all.
Do people even use Kindles? Anyway, the book is your typical horror mystery novel, with a bunch of children returning back to their hometown many years after a terrible event to recall some creepy happenings at Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria. Oh. I was reading the wrong book. The story itself doesn't really expand on the lore of the franchise. Actually, there's some facts in the book that contradict the facts in the game or something like that. It's complicated and weird. The one thing that's important and is linked back to the games, especially moving forward, is a name revealed in the books who is shown to be the owner and creator of the animatronics.
William Afton.
Miller.
Oh.
Wait, that's a fake name. William Afton!
Yeah.
The books go on to explain that Afton was the primary suspect in the murders of some children 10 years before the events of the book, but no evidence could be found against him. This implies that he was the purple guy that minced all the animatronics in the cutscenes in the third game. And now you see all the dots beginning to connect. Like I said before, fans weren't happy with the revelations in this book because it seemed to contradict what was being said in the games. So Scott decided to inhale some copium hydrate and classified this book as a reimagining of the FNAF story. Oh yeah, I forgot. The Silver Eyes is the first book in a trilogy of FNAF books set in a separate canon, and all of them were adapted into graphic novels a few years later, but we're going a little too far here. Don't we have a game we should be talking about?
Still need to get the graphic novels.
With this newfound knowledge, you jump right into the game and begin your shift, and this first night serves as your exposition night to your new job at not Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Before the night begins, however, you get a few lines of exposition. Judging by the Britishness of the accent, eagle-eyed... No, wait. What's an animal with good hearing? Wait one sec.
Dog?
Okay. Pigeon-eared viewers would clock that this girl may or may not be Mr. Afton's daughter. But there's no time to waste. Your shift has begun. Now, instead of the game dropping you immediately into your security guard shift where you just sit down looking at cameras while scranning pizza all damn night, you're dropped into the jankiest elevator of all time and you have to start listening to your phone guy for the game.
Welcome to the first day of your exciting new career. Whether you were approached at a job fair, read our ad in screws, bolts, and hairpins, or if this is the result of a dare, we welcome you.
You'll be extremely familiar with this voice moving forward, as it's a huge franchise feature from this game onward. This voice is simply named Hand Unit, and he's your nursery teacher for the day, as he only exists to...
Alright, let's do this.
In a much more mechanical and less personal way than the guy on the phone in FNAF's 1 to 3. I mean, I guess it does make sense, it being your first day and all, but one of my pet peeves with this game is that you don't really get any form of independence as a character. Everything seems to be handed to you on a plate that has a gaping hole down the middle. After an introduction from Hand Unit, you're given a keypad that's definitely manufactured by Samsung, and you're supposed to type in your name to begin your day. Hold on, Mike? From the first game? He must be strapped for cash! There's no conceivable reason why you'd make the conscious choice.
Why was his name already on the handy unit, though?
The same place as the other place that literally tried to kill you! There has to be an explanation. We're not that stupid. After the revelation that whoever we're playing as seems to have a similar name to the security guard in the first game, we're then introduced to another franchise landmark that's also front and center from this game onward. Humor. Now, this doesn't mean to say there weren't some gallows humor in the previous games, but FNAF World seemed to be the blueprint for the rest of the series, as the self-aware humor takes center stage in the writing. From Hand Unit assuming you could have taken this dangerous job as part of a dare, to everything in the opening segment of the game being so broken and buggy, leading into the greatest and funniest joke to grace the horror game industry.
It seems that you had some trouble with the keypad. I see what you were trying to type, and I will auto-correct it for you. One moment. Welcome, Eggs Benedict.
This game also attempts to be more experimental than the previous FNAF games, as it incorporates more gameplay elements than just moving your mouse around and clicking things on the screen. Now you can actually move. Kind of.
A little bit.
Apparently, this game was conceived before the creation of the X-axis.
We used to play this game all the time.
Move forward and that's it. You can't move back. But now we're crawling through the vents,
play the game all the
ready to do
time in
some
school.
pre-assigned tasks, and we're also given some more exposition. This time it's about
Cool
the
math
company
games is
itself,
crazy.
and we're told that almost immediately after Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria closed down, a void was left in the industry of animatronics with questionable backgrounds. So that was filled by the new company we're working at, named Circus Babies Entertainment and Rental. And to avoid making the same mistakes that Freddy made, the animatronics can be rented out for private parties during the day.
Sounds like an average day in VR chat.
But now you've been given all this knowledge, it's time to put it all
Average
to the
day in
test
VR
with your
chat is
first and
insane.
only task of the day, checking if the animatronics are in good working condition
Play
for
that
the
more.
next day. And surprise, surprise, they are not. So in order to get them working, we have to administer a controlled shock, or the actual way of putting it,
Taser them.
electrocuting them. Well, at least some remnants of the old Freddy buildings are still there because Jesus breakdancing Cristiano, this place is cursed. I feel like there's several eyes just staring into my heart. Why does this
I feel like
controller
every
look
place
the
is
interior
cursed.
of a goddamn
Every
UFO?
single location.
And why are these heads just blinking slowly? I hate this job. I hate everything.
Why are they blinking?
Okay, let's start
Not even connected to anything.
Because it's an entirely new location, for the first time, we're dealing with animatronics that aren't the original four that you've all come to know and love so far in this motion picture. And since all of them have
This
entirely
motion
different
picture.
mechanics you have to become acquainted to, I can't talk about them as quickly as I did the originals. But one thing they all have in common is that they're all referred to as funtime animatronics, and they are all highly upgraded
And they do
versions
the
of
exact
original
opposite of that.
animatronic designs from the original
make you have the
era.
worst time in the
Scott
world.
must have channeled his inner iOS 6 because almost all the funtime animatronics have a glossy feel to them, as opposed to the rough and gritty feel the original animatronics had. The endoskeletons in each of these animatronics are a hell of a lot more elaborate than before, and Sister Location loves to
The
display
fart
that
sounds
fact,
crazy.
as jump scares make a resounding return in the games, and quite a lot of the animatronics love to open up their models to show their skeletons beneath. In Sister Location, the franchise mantle that Freddy held has been passed over to Circus Baby, who seems to be the main animatronic of this new group. While the original animatronics were kind of old and busted, these modern versions signal a tonal shift away from straight up horror, which I think is entirely understandable, but it also raised some concerns about how the franchise would be taken in future games. After going through several rooms and giving out free electrocutions to each of the funtime animatronics in question, you head on over to Circus Control, which is where Circus Baby is, and to the surprise of a grand total of 0 people, giving out a controlled shock actually doesn't work this time, as Circus Baby doesn't return to the stage, despite Hand Unit claiming otherwise. But your shift is done!
Yeah. Everything is very
As was
normal.
custom in every FNAF game, when your shift is over, you'd immediately get transported to the next day. But in a revolutionary twist to the tale, you can now go home. I know, that's crazy. And you
Awesome.
can actually watch the telly. Nothing more to say about this. It's just
With
a television show
foreshadowing
called
TV.
The Immortal and the Restless. And it's about a vampire who claims that the baby that his human wife has given birth to isn't his. Sounds like a trip to Mari is in order. The second night of your job begins,
True
and in
that, yeah.
another twist, the gameplay is actually different this time. Yes, in order to keep things fresh for each night, as opposed to just clicking through cameras faster in the same monotonous way, each night employs a new gameplay mechanic in order to keep you on edge and force you to adapt to it. And the next
Microsoft
mechanic
Edge.
starts immediately into your shift, as you're given new instructions from Circus Baby that contradict everything that Hand Unit has told you so far. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this specific aspect of the game, as Circus Baby's voice lines all exist to just dump lore onto you in quick succession, and hold your hand as you go through each of the tasks, which removes quite a lot of the horror of the unknown.
Yeah, I guess
that
you can
FNAF
think
was
about
known
it
for to
visually like
begin
that.
with. It's not too egregious to start with, but it
People
is a
throwing
pet peeve I
backpacks
have
on
with the
somebody.
game. Returning
And
to
themselves.
the ship, and the FFCMO has also infected this game too, as your electrocution button has malfunctioned,
Yeah, that never works.
and the power must be
Nice
shut
try,
down
bitch.
so that Hand Unit can repair it. But since the power is off, all the animatronics have free roam to mess with you, so Circus Baby tells you to hide under the desk in front of you and begin gameplay mechanic number 2. Close the panel in front of you and hide, as smaller
CS:GO
animatronics
sounds.
named Biddy Babs are looking for you and will peer inside the panel if they notice you, which they will. Your first trial is made clear. Prevent them from opening the panels, whatever the
Maintain
cost.
privacy.
The Biddy Babs, why are they called Biddy Babs?
Why are they called Biddy
Will attempt
Babs?
to open the panel twice to get to you, and you're
I wonder
supposed
what
to
Scott
just
had in
click
mind when
the
he was
area
naming
of
these.
the panel used to shut it in the first
Biddy
place
Babs.
and force the panel
Wrote it right
closed,
in there.
which should in theory be an easy task because they're literal babies. Just volley them top bins. Alas, the task is not so simple, as the controls in this part are intentionally slippery and force you to slowly close the panel again. Failure to do so will of course land you a jump scare. What did I say? But if you successfully fend off the biddy babs, your shift isn't over yet, as you're sent to the Ballora Gallery to begin gameplay mechanic number 3. This mechanic brings
Real
back
cheese.
everyone's favorite feature from FNAF 4, and has you rely on
Sarcasm.
sound to move from one end of the gallery to the other. The twist being that it's pitch black, and if you hear Ballora's music, you're supposed to stop moving. Circus Baby tells you to move
really slowly, so as not to make noise and alert Ballora to your current position.
But the building has other plans, because
Hypnotizing
if
effect.
you take too long...
It seems you are taking a long time.
Despite Hand Unit's helpful advice, simply moving forward and stopping when you hear noises is the best option for you, which will send you to the breaker room to begin gameplay mechanic number 4. There are several offline systems around the complex, and your job is to now reboot them all. However, your next opponent is Funtime Freddy, who will be
This was
on
the worst
stage
thing
to begin
ever.
with, but slowly approaching you each time you make just a singular decibel of noise, which is displayed in the danger level on the top right corner of the screen. The third game's mechanics are brought into the mix here, as to ward him off, you must play audio to trick him into thinking that there's absolutely nothing wrong. From then on, the rest of the shift involves you having to constantly ward Freddy off while attempting to reload the power. Then on, the rest of the shift involves you having to constantly...
Kellen Goff's performance as Funtime Freddy is generally really... Yeah, bro, Kellen is just... I don't know, he's the GOAT. He's like in every single video game now, because he has such good performances. He's even in Valorant now. As Gecko's wingman. It's kind of crazy.
Ward Freddy off while attempting to reload the power in the complex, which is displayed in a diagram
From
next
FNAF
to
to
the restart
Valorant
buttons.
and Last of Us.
Players may notice some extra sections on the outskirts of the complex, and if you look very closely, you may be able to notice that the layouts shown on each of these extra sections are almost identical to the layout of the big-ass house from Five Nights at Freddy's 4, implying this game and its characters could be linked in more ways than one to the events that caused death by... After restarting every system in the complex, your shift is done for the day. Give yourself a pat on the back. But before you give yourself a pat on the back, humble yourself. You're asked to go back the way you came to end your shift, which is a little weird. The game didn't really make you do this before, so maybe something's going to happen if we go back through the gallery. It's weirdly quiet, and I don't like it.
Too quiet. Sticky keys.
Okay. Night 3 puts you against Freddy again, but before we get to that, a new challenger appears, and it's Funtime Foxy. The most annoying animatronic mechanic to get used to in the older games returns with a hunger to ruin your sanity. As similar to the previous night, you're tasked with crossing one area to the other, but with two key differences. Uno, the area in question is not Ballora Gallery, but it's simply the Funtime Auditorium. Obviously, and thus,
where no fun times
Foxy's
happen.
mechanic works similar to Foxy's mechanic in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Because the audium is modern and sleek, Foxy has motion activation, and this contradicts what you're supposed to do, which is walk from one end to the other, since Foxy will just make a beeline towards you if you make a move. So how do you deal with this robot animal?
What's the face for?
So after flashing Funtime Foxy for a frightening flock of femtoseconds, you're directed to gameplay mechanic number ampersand, named Parts and Service. This mechanic is one of the
having
best
so much trouble with that
and the worst
Funtime
mechanics
thing,
in
or the
entire
Funtime Foxy
game at
part.
the same time.
So
and
annoying.
You can tell this mechanic was cherished by FNAF fans because it's reused over and over again in future games. Instead of preventing the animatronics from ever reaching you, as is custom for all the FNAF games up to this point, now you're up and close and really personal with one of them, and no better candidate for your love and tender care than Funtime Freddy. This part of the game is where
the most insane animatronic of all of them.
For good reason though, as you'll soon find out. But at this point, Hand Unit will now give you specific directions.
Why did Funtime Freddy have to be the psychopath?
Funtime Freddy's endoskeleton. Around Freddy himself are several buttons that you need to press in the right order. And the game also tests your listening comprehension, as it will attempt to catch you out for not listening to instructions carefully.
Locate the small button on Freddy's face, just under his right cheek, and press it.
If you weren't paying attention, or you failed geography, or directions are just that confusing, you'd probably go to your right for the instruction. But that is incorrect. Hand Unit is specifically referring to Freddy's right cheek, meaning that it's on your left. I feel like an English teacher saying this shit. After pressing all the buttons, which are admittedly a little hard to see, what with the game's engine making
I probably
all the
definitely
images look
failed
like
that
they were
the
made
first
on
time.
GIMP, The endoskeleton will open with a sound that damn near burst my eardrums when it happened. Look at the wavelength in my editing program. This is ridiculous.
My
Hand
God,
units will give you more
Scott.
instructions until you're asked to do one more thing. Retrieve the
Horror
power
games, they
module
always got
from
the loudest
Bonbon,
sounds in
who is
the
hiding
world.
from you the entire time. This is when the frustration may start to settle, as if you take too long, you will be jump scared, sending you all the way
Yeah,
back to the
that was
beginning
dumb,
of
having
the
to keep him in the
night.
ring of the
But Bonbon
flashlight.
doesn't make things easy, because if any light even breathes on him, he quickly disappeared. And now it's just a game of aim lab, but you've been sitting on your arm for 20 days beforehand. And you've also got Parkinson's. If you end up actually clicking Bonbon's button, you've won. The shift is complete. You can head on down the auditorium.
Just wait till he
to go
sees
and
the
watch
spring
your
lock
telly and
minigame.
scram some popcorn. You've earned this break. Let's head over to the exit.
Oh yeah, Funtime Foxy's still there. That's so stupid. Oh man. Oh wait, no, Funtime Foxy was meant to get you actually.
With absolutely no transition at all, you're shoved into what is, in my opinion, the worst night of the job. Night 4, and get introduced to whatever gameplay mechanic number we're at now. I've lost count. In order to keep things fresh, we've been shoved inside a springlock suit, and after some lore monologue from Circus Baby and some loud noises, the challenge begins. On either side of the springlock suit, there are 10 locks, and the mission is made clear. Keep them wound up for the whole night. Each of the locks will constantly be winding down, and if they're
He kept
close
that
to fully
suit
winding
set up
down,
for 6
you get an
hours.
alert
That's
telling you
crazy.
that you should probably start winding the locks up. It was like Scott said, hey, remember that frustrating mechanic from the second game where you had to keep the puppet wound regardless of night? How about we multiply that by 10? Wouldn't that be highly entertaining? As the night continues, your opponent for the night makes themselves
Didn't Scott
or
have to nerf this
themselves
night?
known. These little critters are called mini-arenas, and they only exist to crawl inside the springlock suits. Why? Oh God, my skin feels itchy seeing this. When they start crawling into the suit, you're supposed to shake them off, as any reasonable person would if they saw loads of small things
And
crawling
the spring
into their
locks
clothing.
move.
I am sorry for that mental image. Shaking them off, however, will cause the spring lock to loosen even more. And as per usual, losing the night will graciously award you with a... Towards the end of the night, the spring locks start
I've seen
loosening
that
up
jump
even
scare so
quicker, and
much.
you need to
My
develop
brain is
strategies to beat the
traumatized by
night,
this
as
night.
winding them up to the tightest point
Oh
is
my
impossible
God.
anymore, thanks to the mini arenas crawling
Took me a
in.
whole
I
day
found
to finish
night
this
be
when it
the most
dropped.
frustrating, as I've never really been a huge fan of the wind things up mechanic, and having to do that 10 times over, coupled with the fact that it gets ridiculously fast towards the end of the night, and any nudge of the mini arenas climbing up could end your night, and you've got yourself a recipe for a whole lot of whining. Surviving the
And
shift allows you
rage.
to go home to
Lots of
enjoy even
rage.
more television before your final night. I don't know if you've noticed, but compared to the previous games in the series, there's just so much to talk about with regards to the game itself, as it feels like it really tried to put the FNAF story into linear mode, because people were making theories and speculating about almost everything to do with the franchise at this point. The final night of the game has you go through most of the gameplay styles you've learned so far, as you begin the shift like you would on night 1, which is all well and good, but the technicians have decided that they wanted to put on their best Sayori cosplay, as checking for Ballora and Foxy will show something else on their respective
That was
stages.
crazily uncalled for.
Immediately after,
It's really
you
not that
also go
bad.
through the whole song and dance of
Yeah,
going through the
it's not like they
auditorium
only,
again
like,
to
got
reach parts and
hungry.
service, where you will finally come face to face with Circus Baby. From this point on, the game diverges into two
But like, why did the animatronics do that to the workers though? Like, that's insane. Like this was like the only game where like they didn't get stuff. They just outright just game edited them.
separate endings depending
crazy.
on what you did
Just
throughout
game
the
ended
game.
those
Taking
people.
cues from FNAF 2, there's a chance that upon dying, you'll be sent into a mini game where you're playing a
The world
circus
in-game
baby,
was
and
ended.
you're playing a platformer where you have to shoot kids with cupcakes until they're satisfied. A typical American situation, as they need not one, but 2 cupcakes to satisfy their needs, and they'll change by turning completely
shade is
red
crazy.
and singing to themselves. I do find it funny that the sprites change from a somewhat regular hairstyle to a brown brick on their head. It looks like someone took a shit on them. Anyway, stop! Enhance! If you are paying attention
Enhance.
throughout the game
Oh,
and
the
had a
eyes are
closer
blue.
look at Circus Baby, you'll notice that in the game itself, Circus Baby's eyes are green, whereas in this minigame, her eyes are blue. This fact is extremely important to remember, especially with relation to this game's story. As I said before, this game plays like a typical platformer, but
That makes you wonder, were all of the animatronic... Did all the other animatronics that had kids in them, did their eye colors change too? Was Freddy's eyes always blue? Were they black at one point? But then when a kid went inside, are they blue? Like, Why was Baby the only one to have the whole eye color change because somebody was possessing the
With
suit?
several twists to distinguish it from the Marios and the Crashes and the Banjo-Kazooies and the Conkers of the day. You get different cupcake types to shoot at the kids, starting with a standard cupcake where you have to shoot twice to satisfy the children, then a blue cupcake which shoots triple standard cupcakes, leading into the green cupcake, which is a super cupcake that instantly satisfies all the children and passes right through them. The game also expects you to do some parkour, as in a delightful design choice. Scott had the different layouts in the minigame not interact with each other and pan over to the next instead of continuously moving. This would indeed cause a lot of frustration if you aren't familiar with the layout of the minigame, with bottomless pits sometimes on the very next screen, giving you no reaction time before you end up dying. In order to beat the minigame, you're supposed to feed all of the kids and collect ice cream at the very end of the line, signaled by the massive signpost that just says goal. Except you're not supposed to do that. What you're actually supposed to do is bring the ice cream back all the way to the start to initiate a small cutscene. And before I get to that, can I just mention that this is probably one of the most frustrating parts of the entire game. Instead of playing through
you have to go all the way back.
You have to actually think of a strategy to feed all of the kids in one try. As in, another brilliant design choice, Scott made it so you can't do anything like switch cupcake type, meaning that any power-up you walk over will overwrite the last one you used, even if you had some cupcakes remaining, which will have you backtrack and go forward and backtrack again to make pixel-perfect jumps over an item you can't get, or else you'll fail the first assignment. And you have to do all of this plus taking the ice cream all the way back to the start in less than a minute. It's so stupid. What should be a normal minigame?
Nah, a time limit is crazy.
Just turns into busy work that will take your sanity and really test your patience, especially when you're fighting from the goal.
Scott is a man that loves to test patience.
You literally have to think of ways to take shortcuts and skip time in order to reach the end in time. And Scott knew this because in the mobile version of Sister Location, you're given 20 extra seconds to complete the minigame. So after you go through hell and high water to get the ice cream to the beginning of the level, Circus Baby simply waits as a girl shows up from out of nowhere to claim her free prize. Take note of the green eyes. Also, why is she walking so slow? It's just a harmless ice cream. What's it gonna do? Eat you? Come on, there's no problem here. If you're confused as to what just happened, you should have taken notes earlier because yet another law dump is in order. Before each night
why did
begins,
Afton design them to do that, man?
Daughter, and she mentions wanting to go and see Circus Baby, much to the behest of Will apparently. And she pays the price for it, as you can see in this minigame. In night 3, there's a secret dialogue entry from Circus Baby herself where she basically tells the player what she did to the child. And it happened on her first day on the stage. Great engineering, lads. You did a
first
good
day
job.
on the job is
Completing
like,
the minigame successfully nets you a star on the main menu. And after
Afton
doing
did
that,
not
you
wait.
can finally get back into
He
night
set her
5
up
with
immediately.
the option to get 2 possible endings. God, this game is so stacked. Now you're face to face with Circus Baby, and if you look closely in the background, you can notice some tendrils moving behind her. But we'll get to that in a moment. What's important is that Circus Baby is broken, and us being tech support on the site at the time, we're supposed to fix her so she's working again. However, she's intentionally sabotaging her own suit for an unknown reason, and you get thrown into another gameplay mechanic where you're given a keypad, and Circus Baby will recite to you a random code that you're supposed to enter to obtain an item. You'd think that this would be extremely easy, and some smartasses definitely thought so. This game isn't that advanced, it's gonna be the same code each time. Scott made the VA recite all the numbers from 0 to 9, and the game randomly chooses an order for you so that no 2 playthroughs are the same. The keypad is also extremely tiny and very prone to human error, as if your mouse is just 1 pixel off, or you take 2 seconds too long to press a button, then you get jump scared.
By the thing that's behind him.
Who the hell is this guy? How many animatronics are you planning on adding to this game, Scott? I've been on this game for so long, give me a goddamn break! Okay, I've calmed down now. Let's continue. This abomination goes by the name of
No one can ever calm down when they're
If
talking
you
about
pay close
FNAF.
attention to the game,
You
you'd
think
have
you're calm
probably
right before you
noticed
see the
that
next
there's a
4
mask missing
games.
from the first control room in Night 5 when shit hits the fan. Ennard is basically an amalgamation of all the animatronics in this game so far in one big bad monster. And you can actually see him behind Circus Baby's body as you're doing your maintenance work on her in this night. After said maintenance, you're asked to go back through the Funtime Auditorium, and it's from this point that the game will now indirectly give you an option to go for the 2 different endings in the game. The real ending and the fake ending. For the sake of what I'm going to say later, I'm going to go over the real ending first. To get to this ending, Circus Baby wrestles your independence away from you and channels her inner Makima, as she tells you in which direction you're supposed to move and when you're supposed to stop. The game also tries to bait you into using the flash beacon in the pitch black auditorium, but you already know what happens if you do attempt to use it. Funnily enough, Circus Baby will tell you that it is Ballora following you through the Funtime auditorium, but judging by the lack of her music in this area, as well as the fact that you're jump scared not by Ballora but by Ennard, you can safely come to the conclusion that the bitch is lying. You're escorted to a brand new room called the Scooping Room, and you're greeted by a lovely sight of all the animatronics completely and utterly annihilated. Ennard then shows up and basically calls you a total dunce for believing everything they said throughout the game.
Trolled.
Yes, that's right. The entire game you weren't being talked to by Circus Baby, you were getting chatted up by Ennard in a different voice. You got catfished. The plan was to escape the facility, but unfortunately, because of how they look, the animatronics have had zero luck. Until you came around, you and your terrible career choices. And now they're going to use you as a vessel to finally escape Circus Baby's entertainment
they can just
rental.
scoop the bones out of and wear like a meat suit.
The story that Scott's trying to tell comes full circle and culminates in you getting scooped by the scooper. Except it's not! Because we have a whole other ending to go through. If you successfully completed Circus Baby's minigame from earlier,
why did they just scoop out this man's innards and leave him as an immortal zombie?
As soon as you enter Funtime Auditorium, you can go over to the right, and all of a sudden you found yourself in a completely new room known as the Private Room. And finally, we got some classic Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay. It took what, 122 hours? But we are finally in an office and ready to start clicking around
when the
place.
game dropped.
And is it worth it? No.
Yes, it is.
This is probably the worst night I've played so far in any FNAF game. And that includes 3! The fun of being in an office instantly wears off within less than 30 seconds, as not only are you notified that you're going to be fired from your job for being there, you now have to audition from both FNAF 3 and FNAF 4 with the sprinkle of the first FNAF game. First off, you're only facing against one animatronic, which sounds easy enough on paper, as it's less things to look at throughout the night. But Scott decided to make that one animatronic the most annoying to deal with overnight. As is custom for all the FNAF games, you have to survive until 6 AM. But for some reason, William Afton hired the same incompetent architects to build this entire complex, because the whole building runs on an 8-year-old BlackBerry battery. Not only do you have to worry about the
BlackBerry
power,
battery
but it runs out faster than the speed of light. How?
Preposterous even.
Anything to start the night off and I'm already at 80%. How am I supposed to survive this? The game tries to mitigate usage of the camera monitor by having you rely on sound to detect Ennard's whereabouts, similar to the mechanics displayed in FNAF 4. But this doesn't help one bit, because it's almost entirely random where he's going to show up. And sometimes he will literally teleport into the room from a camera where you could have sworn you heard something, but it was the game screwing you over. There are no ways to lure Ennard away. He'll relentlessly attempt to find a way into the office, all the while trying to convince you to let him in the room. First using Circus Baby's voice, but then in yet another twist, he will start using William Afton's daughter's voice, giving you more backstory to the sacred text that's the FNAF lore. One of the lines in particular also clues you into exactly who you are in relation to all of this, as Ennard will say this. The implications of this show that the player character, known as Mike, may actually be an Afton. As is custom with FNAF, there are also Easter eggs that can be found in this level that also try and include the original games, and answer some pending questions the fans may have had about the story. In front of you are 3 monitors and a keypad, and pressing 1983 on the keypad as a joke will get you these images. Look familiar? For those in doubt about FNAF 4's relation to the wider story, the images imply that the massive house you play in the 4th game actually belongs to the Afton family, and the main character we play as in that game could also be related to Mike and William Afton. As the night progresses, the power starts to deplete a lot quicker, and you have to fend Ennard off on either side of the doors or the vents. It then becomes a game of serious luck, as if you run out of power, you have to pray that Ennard is nowhere near the room, as if he is, he has a chance of jump scaring you similar to Freddy in the first game. This game
instantaneously, he doesn't even give you a second.
Whole hours to beat from either the power running out or getting cut by RNG throughout the night. But at the end of it all, you finally survived the shift and watched the season finale of the telly show.
Imagine the night 4 though.
After completing the show, it turns out that
took me a whole day.
followed you all the way home. The end.
swear, man.
Wait, did I say the end? No, what
couldn't
I
be
meant
as-
to say is that there's still another night! Night 6 is a custom night, meaning that you can
Still
change
can't be
the
as bad
difficulty
as
levels of each and
the
every one
Springlock
of
night.
the animatronics that
Really
are in
couldn't
system
be.
location, including some new ones that we've never seen before. The reason why this night is so weird, however, is that this wasn't actually shipped with sister location. Scott decided that the game wasn't loaded enough and pushed this extra night as a free update to the game on December 1st, 2016.
Then
Similar
packed
to
like
the first
6
two
different
games,
endings
this
in
allowed
it.
you to set custom difficulties for each of the animatronics in question. And because of a lack of a phone guy or anyone really to tell you how to fend these animatronics off, Scott added tutorials on how to fend off each of the animatronics upon hovering your mouse over the images for each and every one. Now, the gameplay in question is similar to FNAF, where you have to keep tabs on all these animatronics and prevent them from getting inside your office. But now you also have to worry about oxygen, because there's not enough issues in this place. If you've enabled mini arenas, they all hang about the oxygen tank and start draining the oxygen from the room, forcing you to have to electrocute them to get them away. As well as this, Scott decides to turn up the frustration factor by 11 by having mini arenas and more start to block your view, with absolutely no way of preventing it or removing them from your screen. Gee, thanks for nothing. The game does, however, have a few
Like, bro
restrictions,
can't just
and
take
the
them
main
off of
one
his
is the fact
face?
that you have to use the presets provided to you by Scott, and you have preset difficulties for each one. I don't want to talk about absolutely everything because of how long this game is taking to cover, but an important thing to note is the cutscene that occurs upon beating all of the presets on very hard mode. Each of the cutscenes shows a man who is identified later as Mike or Michael Afton walking down a street like no one's business, or
Yeah, look
rather,
at him,
everyone,
just
seeing as
relaxing
he
and
seems to
stuff.
be the most popular person in the town at this moment in time. Everyone's waving and happy to see him. Then as the cutscenes start to progress, he starts to decay more and more, and some of the townsfolk are starting to get weirded out, judging by the completely blank stares on every one of them. His body starts to change color as each cutscene passes, and more people start getting
I'm still
weirded
confused
out.
about these cutscenes though. Like, I thought his body started to like immediately die and turn into purple when they scooped him. So is this after the scooping thing and they just went back to work as if nothing happened that night, and then one day he turned purple, threw them up, and now he's immortal?
To the sight of a different colored person walking down the street, culminating in him turning entirely purple, looking really similar to a certain guy I mentioned earlier in the video. And
Bro,
vomiting Ennard out from inside.
bro ain't got
of him,
no teeth no
finally
more,
freeing
too.
The animatronics that made up
Bro's
Ennard
teeth
to
is
begin with.
purple.
The very last cutscene of the game occurs immediately after and shows the burnt remains of Fazbear's Fright, the attraction you were playing in the third game. And Michael Afton is the new narrator, telling William that he's freed her, probably referring to Ennard. After vowing that he will find William, the scene looks to be over, then all of a sudden, he's back! And finally, the game is over. God. What a wild ride, and we aren't even done with the franchise yet. Sister Location was released to a mixed reception, and I can tell you exactly why instantly. The game's too bloated. Just think about how many game mechanics and plot points were stuffed into this game after several other games in the franchise simply coasted along using ambiguity. It felt like after the weird critical and fan reception that FNAF World received, Scott wanted to get the franchise back on track and on a more linear path than the original games, which resulted in a whole new story featuring characters we'd never even heard of before now. Not to mention the amount of new game mechanics and information that's dumped at you in just one game. And it feels like in his quest to up the ante from the previous games in the franchise, he started to write himself into a corner, as now he has a bunch of animatronics and human characters he needs to keep tabs on to advance the lore. It was at this point that a lot of people, myself included, didn't really pay too much attention to the story, as I said before. It seemed like Scott was obviously making things up as he went along, and if he could go back, I'm 100% sure he would retcon half the stuff in the franchise to make things a little clearer for people. But I'm sure it's part of the fun to speculate on what the story of FNAF could possibly be. As for the game mechanics, the difficulty spike this game showed was immense, with some levels being so easy you could probably bash all of your fingers and still be able to complete it, to carpal tunnel simulators where the slightest bit of RNG could ruin your entire life. All in all, the effect this game had on the entire franchise was
The
pretty
scars from the
immense,
Spring
and
Lock
next game
night,
would prove
they
to be
still are
pivotal for
here.
the series, as 1 year later, Scott would return to Five Nights at Freddy's with
Simulator.
Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator was...
It's so crazy to me that this is like one of the most important games in the franchise. Like, it literally ends everything. But it's like,
Released on December 4th, 2017.
The gameplay
this was the game that
it didn't
Scott
hit
made the
for me.
unanimous decision to take everything established about the franchise so far with regards to gameplay, including the naming conventions, and throw it out of the window into lava. This game also decided to throw a comically large spanner in the franchise works and became the first mainline game in the FNAF series to be released for a grand total of £0, which may weird a couple of people out.
Very much
I'm
free.
99% sure people were convinced the FNAF games were all free, but nope. They cost money. So as you can tell, this game really tried to set itself aside from the other mainline FNAF games, as Scott made it clear before the release of the game that the vibes in this one will be similar to FNAF World. People love tycoon games. That's what's in right now, making cities and planets and stuff, and you're gonna love it.
What the hell was that
Opening
game?
the game for the very first time, you're treated to a minimalist menu that has similar art style to the many death and post-night mini games you've been playing in the franchise thus far, and you're given two options: design a pizza or go to the pizzeria. Obviously we can't go to the pizzeria without pizza. What do you think this is? A Ria? So we're tasked with making the pizza. Not just any old pizza, this is the pizza, as all you're given are a selection of toppings and you're supposed to add them to the pizza. There's no way to check for any allergy information or any scoring system or even compatibility with other toppings. You can add every single topping and you'll be absolutely fine. Every topping except olives though. We don't want to poison the children. Good God. So with our brand new cheese frisbee, we can go to the pizzeria to begin the simulation and oh my God, we're actually playing frisbee with the pizza. Hang on a second, where's our toppings? The game lied to me. What was the point of even making the pizza if we're just going to use the same generic design? During the pizzeria simulation, the new mission is handed to us. In a delightful test of our aim and hygiene, we're supposed to throw the pizza across the room to a group of hungry children until they disappear into the void. Each time you successfully murder a child with your pizza, you get rewarded for it. I guarantee you this would be an actual fast food restaurant worker's wet dream. After several rounds, however, your murder spree starts to get blocked by a version of yourself. But he's black. This bear seems to be blocking your attempts to feed the children into the void, and he follows your path, so you have to think of a way to cross him and break his ankles, allowing you to reach the kids. It's after this round that the game then realizes it's supposed to be a Five Nights at Freddy's game and channels its inner moniker.
Good Lord, a whole wall of them. I forgot this even happened. Scott really just said, wake up.
Simulator. I lied. I lied to all of you. You're actually playing LA Noire, but with animatronics instead of moderately human characters. You're
Just remember everybody being super surprised by this.
To the phone guy we all know and love. We'll call him Cassette Man. Why do these names give me the biggest Chainsaw Man vibes? And you're face to face with what used to be Circus Baby, ready to begin gameplay style number 2. I'll elaborate on this later as this is just the opening cutscene, but Cassette Man will play several audio prompts with the intention of seeing whether the animatronics they found will respond to it. Since there's no such thing as peripheral vision, we have to look down at the sheet of paper asking us to document the results like we're watching a GCSE science experiment. At the end of the cutscene, the remainder of Circus Baby interrupt Cassette Man and the game decides to switch from channeling
like, for real, like,
to channeling that inner Yuri.
Begin audio prompting.
Like, do you know how many? I know I'm pausing a lot, but he said something so true. Do you know how many situations in FNAF could have been solved with Mike using his peripheral vision?
3,
2, 1.
It's a
deception. I lied to you all
Deception.
again. It's not a horror game. It's actually a business simulator. And there's a very familiar voice welcoming you to the game.
It's a new day. It's your time to shine.
Whoa, 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 whoa. The hell is wrong with you? The true bulk of the game is introduced right here, and Hand Units offers you a tutorial as to what to do, complete with many conflicting art styles and the sarcastic gallows humor that's continued over from sister location. I actually like this opening cutscene as it's aesthetically similar to many job tutorial videos and infomercials that people would receive in this era on their first day on the job. And our job is pretty simple. We're a franchisor of Fazbear Entertainment Incorporated, and this is a massive corporation responsible for all of the locations we've played through so far in this video. So you can clearly tell that this corporation is really well run and there's absolutely no issues whatsoever with the management. That was sarcasm if you couldn't tell. After this information dump, we're finally given access to our brand new restaurant, and this is where the majority of the game happens. Good luck. To begin our expensive voyage into running such a large and established restaurant, especially in a volatile economy, we're given, no, blessed with a grand check of $100 $100. How am I going to do
$100.
anything with this?
$100 must be like $100 million to Fazbear
we
Corp.
can choose to spruce up our restaurant. Dumpster Diving Weekly does what it says on the tin. This is the kind of stuff you wouldn't even bother looking on eBay for. You'd find this stuff in a back alleyway with a text written on it in blood saying play with me or something. Stan's budget tech is a slight step up from before. This is basically going from eBay to Pound Stretcher. Some of the stuff is
Pound Stretcher? What the
trash,
fuck
but
is
you start
that?
to get some useful items such as some arcade games.
Never
How
heard of
about
that one.
We'll return to the arcade in a second, but let's move on to the more prized items. Smiles and Servos Inc. has some more valuable items and animatronics you can add to your pizzeria, but you're going to have to cough up a pretty penny. And then finally, the big kahuna, the Rare Finds Auction. This is basically your Harrods, where you can buy yourself some super expensive goods that could and would cost your entire life savings. And then your right lung.
Oh my
Maybe a couple
gosh.
of feet pics. Since this is the first day and we're extremely broke, however, we're only able to buy things from the dumpster to kick things off. Each of the items have a couple of stats attached to them, and it's your job to make sure that your pizzeria has a nice, clean, and healthy environment for your
filthy
potential
League of
customers.
Legends.
From atmosphere all the way down to bonus revenue. Some items are better than others, so obviously, this being a business tycoon game, you need to choose carefully and spend wisely so you can maximize profits while keeping the entire area safe. Yes, I said safe, as there's some items that have a hidden stat showing its liability risk, which is just telling you how likely it is to accidentally kill a child. After buying the items that you want and blowing all your money, the second part of the restaurant management begins, where now you can place your bought items somewhere in the area. We really haven't been dealt a good hand by our corporate overlords, as the land we've been given looks more like a dirt house than an actual restaurant. Not to worry, for a low price of $250, we can upgrade the entire room to a larger floor plan. Magnificent.
But how do we make this money? We just blew it all.
I hear you ask. Well, on the top right corner of the screen, you are also given a sponsorship offer. Why, yes, you can live out your YouTuber fantasy by securing the bag and taking a sponsorship from Raid Shadow Legends. This will give you a lot of bread to help you add more things to the pizzeria. There's always a price to pay when accepting sponsorships, however, and the biggest one will happen when you finish the customization of the restaurant. Before you do that, there needs to be some entertainment products so your pizzeria is a little bit more than absolutely miserable. And you can start with a ball pit.
Jeez, the editing.
Oh boy. Here we go. Adding entertainment products into the pizzeria also gives you an opportunity to playtest them using the play tokens you're given at the beginning of your shift, which begins yet another gameplay style in which you're given short and snappy mini games that you can play to earn tokens and potentially more money if you do them perfectly. All of the games rely on quick decision making and even faster reaction times, and the ball pit mini game is the best example of what the game means by liability risk, as this game mode specifically has you control the small animatronic introduced in this game as Helpy. Wait, hang on a second, this ball pit's tiny, and you're asking me to jump all the way from there? Do you want me to perish? So you get given 5 attempts to jump in the pit, and god damn it, I missed. At least I get another attempt.
Just by a little. Wow.
I think he's dead. You don't need to worry.
He's
too
super
much
dead.
Because for an extra $50, you can add safety straps that will remove the risk rating from the item and make
Safety
it slightly
straps?
safer for the potential infants dive bombing into the pit. The game not only lets you become your favorite YouTuber by taking sponsorships, but it also lets you become your favorite video game corporation by adding microtransactions within the restaurant to maximize your profits. For some odd reason, you also get the option to add a coin slot to a ball pit. Wait, how's that gonna work? Completing any of the mini games provided to you nets you an increased Faz rating, and every 1,000 points gives you an additional $100 to work with to make further upgrades to your restaurant. Personally, I found this segment to be the most fun in the entire game, as it's such a wildly different vibe and gameplay style to the other FNAF games. It felt a little nice to have a breath of fresh air and actually manage the restaurant instead of dealing with creepy animatronics every night that are constantly heading to your location. So after finishing the tinkering with your restaurant, you can go home and deception! The restaurant management was just a front. Did you really think Scott would make a FNAF game and not have any monitor eyeballing segments? So with this section of the game, your tasks are extremely simple. Your restaurant is now officially open, and you've got to manage things around the building before you can officially end your shift. The office that you're in has definitely seen some better days and looks more like a straight up prison cell, with the weird metal wall and the fact that no one in the FNAF universe has ever heard of a bin before, seeing as there's almost always just trash on the table. Scattered around the office are various drawings of the animatronics that are obviously there to set the mood and make you feel better and warm and fuzzy inside while doing the tasks. And to top things off, directly to the left and to the right of you are giant vents for some godforsaken reason. Who signed off on this? I just really shouldn't ask this anymore. Well, at least he can still honk Helpy's nose. On the monitor itself, there are various tasks that we are assigned to complete the shift, and these can be done in any order. This monitor looks and feels like it's running from an Intel Atom processor, as Scott decides to bring back some prized mechanics from Five Nights at Freddy's 3, namely the agonizingly slow monitors. As slow as the monitors are, however, the technology within them is way ahead of its time.
Imagine he had a do-all button and you had to commit to it
on this PC. Your mission
without being able to
starts off with
move
ordering
and
absolutely
defend yourself.
everything for your restaurant, from the cups to the pizza kits. No need to worry about banking information or anything of the sort, because it's really just a one-click purchase. It may happen that during your purchases and tasks, your PC might suddenly be infected by a virus. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's your sponsorship that you unwittingly took to try and make more money. Throughout this section of the game, sponsorships can and will show up on your PC screen at any point and completely stop what you're doing, forcing you to have to watch the advertisement and or skip it to continue. If that sounds extremely familiar, then you're obviously not thinking straight. After ordering your supplies, you can also print some advertising for your restaurant. And it's almost as if we used HP to print our stuff because it's so bloody loud. Shut the f. Now that
yeah, super loud and takes very long.
Most fun part of the job. Yes, that's right. Clicking more buttons on your monitor to do things like unclog the toilets. Unclogging the toilets. Why do we need to do that? How the hell is it even possible to do that by just clicking a button? Why does it take so long to unclog the toilets?
Maybe the computer's tied to the sewage system? I don't know.
Anyways, if you are smart enough to save some money and not blow it during the restaurant management segment, which a lot of people ended up doing, you can use the equipment tab to try and make your task a little bit easier by purchasing better versions of your current equipment. Why wasn't this the very first thing that we can upgrade? I do find it funny that regardless of how many upgrades you give the restaurant, the office never changes. It's always the same hot, sweaty, claustrophobic prison box the entire way through the game. The reason why I say hot is down to the fact that on the bottom right corner of the screen, we're given a room temperature statistic. Since this PC also apparently rocks an FX 6300 processor, the room is also liable to getting a little bit sticky, and the air conditioning is there to mitigate the sweatiness of the room. But what this does mean is a lot of noise is generated, and this is a very bad thing a little later in the game. Notice how I haven't talked about the giant elephant in the room. You're probably wondering, where are the animatronics? And this is what the very next part of the game is all about. At the end of every shift, you complete all the tasks and log off the PC, only to be taken to the very next screen, and you're back in LA Noire mode, inside an investigation room facing an animatronic that Cassette Man has found in the street beforehand. You're given an option to either throw it back in the street or attempt to salvage it for use in your restaurant, you being the little cheapskate that you are. If you attempt to salvage the animatronic, you're given tools in front of you to assist your journey, mainly a shock tool and a piece of paper. And once again, similar to the start of the game, you have to listen for a bunch of sounds and see whether the animatronic responds to it or not, by documenting the results immediately after. From this day onwards though, there's a big twist to the tale, and that is the new gameplay style that's introduced as part of this mode. Seeing as you're apparently unable to look at a piece of paper and the animatronic at the same time, the paper covers your entire vision. While your eyes are focused on the paper, there is a chance that the animatronic you're interrogating moves just a tiny bit, and I really do mean a tiny bit. This game mode requires you to pay very close attention to the behavior and the facial expressions of the animatronic, as even the slightest subtleties can prove fatal. It's just like ye old creepypastas from all those years ago. If the animatronic moves just a little bit or is getting a little too close for comfort, you're given full authority to doubt. Electrocute the bitch. But you can't go all Palpatine and shock them until they're brain dead, because there's also a salvage value in the bottom right corner of the screen. This is how much money you'd receive from salvaging the animatronic in question, and you're given just 3 shocks of freedom before any further shock would damage them, devaluing the very thing you're trying to make money from. It's in your best interest not to be overzealous with your shocks, because the animatronic value can range from $500 to $5,000. Good God, what the hell? Once you've survived all the audio prompts, your shift is officially over, and you can now count the money you made throughout the day. Yes, this game is still a business simulator at the end of the day.
You pay $5,000 for a possessed robot.
Of your financial decisions, and whether you'll have to pay for what you did in the restaurant design segment of the day. Whether you added more money-making strategies or not is integral to seeing how much revenue you make. And at the end of the summary, there's an option for lawsuits. If your restaurant had only a smidgen of risk factor from the equipment you bought, you're in for a load of trouble as the might of the American justice system strikes down on you. The next gameplay style is pretty short, but as a business, you have to read the lawsuits and choose whether to fight them or settle. You definitely would get a kick out of some of the text outlined in the lawsuits from the Parent Union against unsafe atrocities and mechanical abominations, also known as Puauama, detailing heinous actions such as a child falling from a ride, standing up and falling down again, and the staff taking 30 minutes to even give a shit. Honestly, good on the staff members. They're probably not getting paid enough for this. Wait, but we're the ones supposed to be paying them. If you don't have enough to settle or fight the lawsuit, then the game is over, accompanied by... And because we're broke, that means the game is over, and we've officially gotten ourselves the Certificate of Bankruptcy. This is one of many certificates you can get, each of them being endings for the game. But there are only 2 endings that I really want to cover in this section of the video, as they're arguably the most important for the entire franchise. Before we skip over to the endings, let's move on to the next couple of days and talk about some of the changes to the gameplay styles you get. For the rest of the week, the gameplay in the restaurant management segment remains the same. You buy items that are relevant to the well-being and the monetary value of your restaurant and configure them to maximize profits. There are some things that I should probably mention though before continuing, and it's mainly some of the extra messages that you're given with some items that you can purchase in the stores. In order to house some of the animatronics in your restaurant, you need a stage to put them on, and there's a warning that should you purchase a large object in such a terrible condition, there's a chance that there could be something undesirable hiding inside. The price of the item will normally reflect this by having it heavily marked down from the usual price, and you have to weigh up the options and assess whether or not it's worth getting an item cheaper and running the risk of an animatronic hiding inside it, which will become relevant at the tail end of your shift. Let's move back a little further though to the forms of entertainment you can provide in your restaurant. Some of the entertainment forms include arcades and playable mini games that children could potentially play when they go to your restaurant. Out of all the mini games you can playtest, however, there are 3 extremely important minigames that you must play to understand the inner machinations of this game's universe. Yes, that's right. As a mainline FNAF game, this has some hidden story beats and lore within its confines, and 3 minigames are of utmost importance to reach them. The first one is called Fruity Maze. On the exterior, it looks like a regular old
This was a very annoying game for me to try.
You just have to go through a maze and collect all the fruit
do the
with the
ending
assistance
on
of different power-ups that help you. Each time you collect a certain amount of fruits, your timer gets extended, accompanied by the reflection of someone who isn't you playing the game. Who the hell is she? When you complete the game once, you can actually go back to replay the game to see if you can get a faster time, and looks like we're collecting dogs with ketchup on them now. How pleasant. Now you'll notice that if the timer gets extended, you get a reflection of this girl again, but she's looking a little more distressed at what she's seeing. I mean,
very glum.
It's just flavored hot dog. The game plays as normal, and after
flavored
beating the
hot
game for the
dog
second time, going for a third attempt will essentially destroy the game and turn it into a creepypasta. Your character now trails blood, everything is glitchy, and if you look really closely behind the girl, who's now crying, there seems to be a familiar character really intent on watching you play the game till the timer runs out. And when it does, you get this exchange.
He's not really dead. He is over here. Follow me.
It isn't exactly known who the girl is officially, but I need you all to keep this question in your mind because I'm probably going to say something that'll piss you off in about 6 minutes. Let's move on to the next mini game.
Everybody thinks that's Susie, right?
The second game, and on paper, it's a simple racing game. Just control a pink race car and avoid all the purple cars with a really kick-ass soundtrack.
That thing is crazy.
The story clues in this specific game mode do require you to do a little bit of cheating to get, however. There's a special segment at the bottom of the screen, and hugging the border at the bottom will allow you to clip through, which changes the innocent racing game to a much darker exploration game, where you have an option to look around and find several locations. Okay, just 2 locations. The first one being a random location just named Jurors, and the second one being a house. Getting out of the car, and it looks like we're trying our hardest to cosplay as a naked Simpson. We eventually find our way into a room in our own house, and after failing to breach the main door, we go around outside, only to discover that the window has been shattered and whoever was in that room has escaped. And they apparently will be sorry when they get back. Again, it hasn't officially been revealed who the hell all this was about at all, but it's yet another fuel to the fire that is speculation. The third and final minigame actually isn't from any arcade machine you can buy. Instead, you have to buy an animatronic to access this one. What a twist! After dropping $12,500 of your hard-earned money on the security puppet, you can actually test it by playing a minigame. In the game, your job is to stop specific children types from exiting the building, namely ones with a green bracelet. We just really hate the color green. You will notice though that said green child never appears the first and second times you play the game. And you may think to yourself, the game just bamboozled me. Can't have that. But that's where you're slightly mistaken, as the green child does exist and is already outside the building, you total fucking failure. Oh wait, we're not allowed to actually play because someone has sabotaged the puppet. We free ourselves from the current predicament and
like, who
crawl
put that
outside,
box
but
there?
Since we're not exactly
Couldn't even do his job.
waterproof, the rain damages our electronics before we can reach the child we're supposed to protect, and now they're dead. Yep, they just died, and since we're in the rain, we died as well, and the game is over. Now I've kind of summarized the 3 most important mini-games in
Where did the girl even
Simulator.
go?
You're all wondering,
Did she disappear in that cutscene too?
The restaurant tycoon nature of the game. I thought this wasn't supposed to have a story. Well, I thought Freddo's would be 5p again. We can't all win. I know I promised not to go too much into the lore, but this is the part of the game that may mug a few of you off. This game was made to somewhat end the story of Five Nights at Freddy's. Completely. After Sister Location dumped a ton of story and lore into the franchise, Pizzeria Simulator was made with the intent to tie up all the loose ends that the story had and serve as the grand finale of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. You can tell as well, so much lore was shoved front and center that it really feels like Scott wanted to make a conclusion to the franchise, but didn't have the means to do it until Sister Location rolled around. We'll get to the endings in a bit, but first, let's go over one of the biggest issues I have with the lore dumping in the game. The supplementary material. If we go all the way back to earlier in the video during FNAF 2, there are several mini-games you can get upon dying that clue you in on the lore behind the franchise. One of them's a mini-game in which you're supposed to take cake to each of the children shown on screen, but there's another bold child outside the boundary borders crying to themselves over not getting any of the cake and being trapped. Soon after, a purple car arrives and the purple guy exits the car. Okay, he just kills the child. I thought it was going to do something worse. While the minigame is playing, I mentioned before that you can hear some random guy burping letters of the alphabet.
This is supposed to be that one for... No, actually, it's not the same one. What am I talking about? Never mind.
If you went back to check the letters in question, you'll be able to spell out the words Save
them.
Finally, when the minigame is over, you get another jump scare and sent back to the menu. But note that it's only the puppet that jump scares you in this minigame, and no other animatronic. Link this back to Pizzeria Simulator, and it seems like the same event happened here. The security puppet minigame is just a slightly more RTX version of events, even down to giving the character in question a fade and changing her gender. This game kind of stretches the question of what is canon, because Fruity Maze is also guilty of being extremely ambiguous as to whether things are canon or not. So this game is basically trying to end the lore by properly explaining what happened to the kids that died and haunted the animatronic shells from the first game and onwards. But what it fails to do is make things coherent enough to understand who is what from just the games. Because you're supposed to read the books as well! In the first game, there are newspaper clippings that reference missing children, which obviously refers to the Spring
I do find it kind of weird that you have to read the books. Like, not everyone's gonna do it.
Incident. What they fail to give the audience is the names of said children who were murdered in the first place. The girl in the reflection of Fruity Maze is assumed to be one of the children that were murdered in the original incident, as the means in which Spring Bonnie lures her away are very similar to the strategy used in the mini-games in the third game. Are you with me so far? Officially, we're not given the name of the girl playing Fruity Maze, except we were because it's name dropped. In another book! The Freddy Files was a guidebook detailing some information about the FNAF games and their mechanics, written by Scott and released in 2019. And in that book, he mentions that the girl playing the Fruity Maze is named Susie. Alright, that's understandable, fair enough. But then it gets confusing because in another book series named Fazbear Fright, which are a couple of anthology horror stories set around the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, it's shown that Susie's dead spirit is inside Chica. Don't even get me started about the content on Fazbear Frights. You really don't want to know. Are the books canon or not? Trust me, it gets so much worse from here. Let's return back
Scott
to the game.
said they weren't, but like, I guess some have elements of canon, I guess.
To spice up your restaurant or you salvage them, this
Weird
changes
stuff.
the office parts of the game, as now you need to prevent the animatronics from reaching your location through the giant vents in your room. How do you do this? Luckily for you, this game is much easier than the others as there's no difference in mechanics between animatronics. Taking after FNAF 3, you're simply supposed to lure them away from your current location by playing audio cues in rooms that are as far away from you as possible, which will lead them there. You can track their movement by using the motion tracker, and you can stop them from getting inside your room by flashing your light down the vents. However, any slight sound that's made from anywhere in your office and those animatronics are on you quicker than you can say anti-disestablishmentary.
Shit! Why did that make me jump? I was supposed to be expecting that shit.
Oh, now the animatronics
Oh my God.
have voice lines upon killing you? For
Fuck!
what purpose? Tilting me when I get
Jesus!
bullshit about RNG. Anyways, now you have to do the same job you've always done. And remember how I mentioned how loud
Jumpy
each of the
ass,
tasks
bro.
are? All
Oh
of
my
these sounds
God.
make you bait for any rogue animatronic to come crawling in the vents and done your dance, innit? So you better not have accepted those sponsorships, or else
Oh my
you're gonna have
God.
a whale of a time reopening
Like I
the
almost
game
just had a
after your
heart
many
attack.
jump
I was
scares.
feeling in my
You can
hand
prevent
for a
any
bit.
noise from getting into your room, and this is done by turning off your fans and
Almost
your
just
PC
died on my
itself.
chair.
However, this poses two issues. Eins, turning the PC off may prevent noise, but it also prevents you from leaving the office and getting your task done. And zwei, turning the fans off causes the temperature of your already sweaty room to get even sweatier and increase. If you let the temperature get all the way up to over 120 degrees, you automatically score a game over from heat stroke.
Passed
With
out.
all that being said, the rest of the week now
I
revolves
don't think I've ever
around
seen that
making
before.
sure you salvage the animatronics and surviving each of the office
Turn
shifts
my
with them.
audio
If
down
the
so it doesn't
animatronics
jump
are
again.
already in your restaurant, the salvaging section becomes much easier, as they leave a pleasant message telling you there's no need
one's
to go
here.
through with
I'm
playing the
already
LA Noir
inside.
style. The importance of this is displayed in the main ending of the game, which we can finally get to now. Actually, there's one more thing. There is one more important item that you can buy to get yourself a special ending in the game that not many people may know about if they played through the game for the first time. If you go to the Rare Finds auction and find this horrifying abomination, you can add it to your restaurant. This animatronic is known simply as Egg Baby, and the job of this
Egg
animatronic
Baby?
is to be a data archive for your restaurant and the entire franchise as a whole. This comes into play in the office section of the game, as you can get an ending just from doing something as simple as pressing the blue button at the bottom of the screen. If you do that, you're greeted with a
Scooper
blueprint
mechanics.
showing some schematics for
I mean, the
inventions
schematics. Why did I say
created by William
mechanics?
Afton, complete with some extra information about the lore spoken by Cassette Man. It's implied that in this lore dump, this man co-founded Fazbear Entertainment with Willie Afton, and Afton decided to use his influence to lure a bunch of kids back into the restaurant and murder them. This is where things get even more confusing, as the curse of Scott not knowing what the hell he's doing comes into play. The file name of the audio recording is referred to as HRY223, which hints at the name of its co-founder. But apart from that, there's absolutely no other clue as to the identity of this Cassette Man or what he has to do with the story. Unless you read the books! Because in the Silver Eyes, his name's revealed as Henry Emily. Are the books canon or not? It gets even better, as the dead child in the Security Puppets minigame is actually his daughter. And Henry has been trying to put a stop to William's dastardly antics since the very first iteration of Fazbear Entertainment's restaurants, which just so happened to be the restaurant in the 4th FNAF game. So his plan was to lure all the animatronics with some of the dead spirits still attached, including William's, into your restaurant, which is why he really wanted you to salvage all of the animatronics he found. He managed to get a job as an instructor similar to Phone Guy to tell you, the restaurant owner, how to do all this, and his plan would come to a head in the final day of your work week. And now we can come to the moment you've all been waiting for. The ending. The ending is one of the most talked about and most iconic parts of the entire franchise, as the explosion of lore, the story beats, and Scott's attempts to tie everything together to the games and the books, as much as Scott doesn't want to admit they're canon, reach their conclusion here. At the end of the final shift, the remains of Circus Baby attempt to put you through yet another debate. She explains that she wants to make her father proud with what you as the player have done. However, this turns out to be yet another debate, as Cassette Man interrupts Circus Baby and begins
The debating
admittedly
of the
one of the
debater.
hardest monologues in a horror game. Like Jesus Christ, this is coming from a Five Nights at Freddy's game. The hell? Anyway, the general gist of the monologue is that Henry actually constructed this entire restaurant with the intention of trapping all the animatronics and souls within. And the next step of his master plan is to burn it all down. With no survivors. You can see that the plan is working. As
Yeah,
the
well, with
temperature
no
of the office
survivors.
starts to
Everyone
increase to
died in this
levels that in
fire.
regular
As
gameplay
they should
you
have.
would pass out on.
Definitely.
This is now where Scott attempts to tie all of the lore in together. There were clues in the previous game, but it's now officially revealed that the soul of Elizabeth Afton, who is William's daughter, got trapped within Circus Baby. And by burning down the restaurant, Henry can finally free all of the lost souls killed by Afton in the restaurant by destroying them, himself, William, and you. And trust me, some of the lines that he says in this monologue do go a little hard.
Although for one of you,
the darkest pit of hell has opened. Yeah.
The
writing behind with the pet on fire and shit.
Burnt down and all of the animatronics destroyed, the souls are finally free from
that was a crazy line.
Afton's curse. And Afton has finally got what was coming to him. Getting to this point nets you the completion ending. And you can tell from how thorough this ending went through with tying up all the possible loose ends in the franchise that Scott really intended this to be the final mainline game in the entire franchise. Upon releasing this game, it was clear that Scott seemingly had no intention of continuing the story past this point, as everything reached a logical conclusion at the end of Pizzeria Simulator. What was supposed to be a simple business management game had so many webs and hidden secrets that it stood on its own as a solid conclusion to an iconic horror franchise. And this was released for free. It kind of speaks volumes that
pretty crazy.
Like this, with content like this, was released for free to the masses. But that doesn't mean that the game doesn't come without criticism, as I've said before. Scott really wanted to end the story and stop the millions of questions flooding in about who did what and where are XYZ characters, and it really shows as the multitude of storylines and lore kind of reached its head with this game and sister location. The franchise got steered from games that have small secrets linking them with one another to a spider's web of contradictions to a linear story that branched things out and provided people with some closure. After replaying all the games up until this point, I used to think that this franchise really would have done well with ending with the third or fourth game, but I can now see that Pizzeria Simulator really stands on its own as a concrete
or just
ending.
maybe ending
And
after
Scott
this,
really set out to
because
make
Security
this the
Breach
definitive ending as he
and Help
decided
Wanted
to
kind
develop one more
of took it
custom
somewhere
night for
else.
the franchise, simply titled
NAR.
Ultimate Custom Night, was released on June 27, 2018.
And you know
the
what?
initial
UCN
plan
would
for
have
the
been a
game was
perfect
for it
ending
to be a
too,
DLC
because
to
Purple Guy's in
Pizzeria
Purgatory.
Simulator, similar to how the Custom Night was added in future updates to Sister Location. However, due to the undertaking of such a task, Scott decided to spin it off into its own game. There's not really much else to talk about with regards to the gameplay, so I'll keep this one brief for you guys. UCN works similar to all the other custom nights in the FNAF franchise, but this time you have an option to choose pretty much every single animatronic that Scott has ever made so far, along with a difficulty level. All of them have vastly different mechanics, and this game's pretty much the ultimate test of your reflexes and micromanagement skills, because holy hell, there's a lot to take in when you first load into the game. First things first, there are 6 possible ways that the animatronics can enter the room, and you really need to pay attention to all of this when you try and go for some of the harder challenges in the game. The office contains random bits and pieces from all the FNAF games up until now, and you can actually customize the skin of the office based on whether you prefer something standard or something a little more exotic. The mission of the game is simple: survive until 6 AM, but this time you're given some
Mission
help in that
objective,
there's now
survive.
a snazzy new timer on the top right corner of the screen, so you don't have to worry about how long it takes to get to the next hour. This being the culmination of all the FNAF games up to this point, Scott brings in absolutely every animatronic and character he's made so far into this game, with a grand total of 50 animatronics you may have to keep tabs on at any time. And all of them have different mechanics that will also confuse you should you enable them all for the ultimate final challenge, which I'll talk about in a second. All the mechanics from all the FNAF games are brought into the mix, such as the power management from the first game, the Freddy mask from the second game, the god-awful PC from the third game,
Where
and
did that
onwards needing to sound check
where did
on
that
each end
PNG of
from
the
fourth
Freddy
game,
mask
and
come
whatever
from?
these mechanics were from whatever these
City
games were,
Skylines?
because of the amount of animatronics you have to keep tabs on and the amount of work that Scott needed to do to accommodate for them all, this game isn't really scary. You know, I haven't actually properly mentioned it, but the scare factor of the franchise has kind of diminished in the past couple of games. We've gone from a straight up terrifying experience to goofy fun times with everyone's favorite robots, and this is highlighted in UCN with the many jump scares you get as a result for being a terrible gamer. Most of them are lame, but I really don't blame Scott. Imagine having to animate 50 custom jump scares for absolutely every animatronic in the game. I wouldn't even bother. Speaking of the scare factor, Scott finally acknowledges the one thing that he was avoiding since the second FNAF game: the animatronic designs, especially Toy Chica. While playing the game, you can collect things like Faz coins and earn points based on what you do in the game. You can spend these microtransactions on spicing up your office, but you can also reach certain milestones that will give you some tongue-in-cheek cutscenes, one of them being Bear of Vengeance, featuring anime counterparts of
I
Freddy,
still can't
Foxy,
believe
and
this.
Mangle
Like,
in a samurai
we got
show
anime
environment, complete
FNAF.
with the token Cawthon comedy seal of approval. And the second one is a dating anime show featuring Toy Chica. Wait, stop! There are multiple short episodes in the show, and they all involve Toy Chica talking about a previous crush she had that didn't go well, and her plans to try and make things work with her next one.
The joke is that her crushes are all murdered.
Yeah, this absolutely proves that Scott knew exactly what he was doing when he made Toy Chica. There ain't no way. Apart from that, there isn't much to say about UCN, seeing as it's essentially an extended DLC to Pizzeria Simulator. But as per usual, Scott decided to shove one more challenge in the game as a final test of your micromanagement skills. And that is
50-20 mode.
Or 20-20-20-20-20-20-20-20-20-20-20.
No way he says it 50 times, right?
20-20. You can't be bothered. I truly have no idea
You
how
should have done it
people
50 times.
managed to
That'd be
beat
funny.
this mode, but this mode requires your utmost concentration and knowledge of every single animatronic's abilities and mechanics in order for you to survive the night. And I forgot to mention one of the animatronics who goes by the name of Dee Dee. She shows up to absolutely ruin your night. If she pops up, she will enable an animatronic or a setback that you didn't set yourself before starting the night, meaning you're now at the mercy of playing a night with an animatronic you didn't enable, or worse. You can repel her with items purchased using your fast coins, but there really isn't a point in doing this in 50-20 mode. With everything I've said so far about the game, you're probably thinking that Scott finally made a game that's impossible to beat. I mean, he thought the original 20-20-20-20 mode in the first FNAF game was impossible till Mark beat it. So surely with 46 more animatronics and 1,000,001 extra mechanics, some of which are dictated by RNG, this difficulty is completely impossible, right? Enter Dorko, a FNAF YouTuber who took it upon himself to complete the ultimate challenge. And you know what? I'll just let the clip speak for itself.
Hilarious. Oh, I love it. This clip was crazy when it came out.
The game's mechanics
He
have
stressed
been
him the
dissected
hell
so
out to
thoroughly
complete
there
that,
are
I
also
swear.
bots programmed to play through the mode, which I find absolutely crazy. But enough of me gushing about the wonders of programming. It's now time to end this era. Say what you will about the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, but there can be no denying the effect it's had on the horror industry. At the end of it all, it feels bittersweet, you know? The franchise had its ups and downs, but the influence of its mechanics really brought a spark in horror games that hasn't been seen since, for better and for worse. It's kind of crazy how Scott Cawthon managed to turn his life around. From a string of mid-tier flops,
seriously.
his final attempt at game development managed to kickstart several careers.
Like I said earlier in the video, Scott was on his shit. He was a grinder.
That's
That's all it takes.
Conclusion that Pizzeria
So I
Simulator
respect
and
him.
Ultimate Custom Night posed, the franchise finally laid
He
to
put all
rest.
that.
Wait.
And he put.
Wait, there's still more? No!
And he put everything he got from his grinding. I can't. This guy is too funny. Anyway, I'm trying to say, he put everything he got into his grinding back into the audience, back into charity and everything. I love it. And even other people's fan universes of his game.
I'm not taking that! How do you even continue from this point? It's ridiculous! I can't do this, man! I can't do this, man!
The insanity that one goes through going through this series is portrayed perfectly here. Let me guess, you quit on Help Wanted and Security Breach? Nobody did blame you. Oh, did he actually quit? I'm about to fucking see a living tombstone. Oh no, it's credits. He gave up. Yeah, I mean, there's really no point in going over Help Wanted and Security Breach because, like, I think Help Wanted didn't have Scott's hand in it because I think he was busy doing other stuff, and then he quit around Security Breach. So yeah, there was no point adding it. I see it. But, you know, they're good games. I don't want to diss Steel Wool. I love the people at Steel Wool. Good people. But I just want to make sure there's no after scene credits. But yeah, this was a great video. Like, holy hell. But holy hell, that great video, great editing, great attention to every single detail. Like, holy hell, I think we can finally say that if one wanted to talk about the history of Five Nights at Freddy's front to back with Scott's influence in it, it would take you 3 hours and 7 minutes. Like, swear to God, that is crazy. Great job to THAFNINE, great job to everybody associated to making this video. And sorry, his name's not THAFNINE. His name is come on, you freaking YouTube thing. Oh wait, his name is THAFNINE. I'm sorry, I've been sitting here for 3 hours. I'm tired. Great video. I'll see y'all later.